You're very welcome.
Who told me that?
Joel, I think.
You're going to
That
get,
was me, Agustin.
you're going to get extra points for that, Agustin. I nearly forgot, as usual. I sometimes start in the middle. So it looks very weird when you see it afterwards. Okay.
My existence is more valuable now.
Excellent, excellent. Very, very pleased. Thank you. Okay, so so welcome everybody, and I see that very, very nice that we're getting a sort of community. People are coming almost every time, which is very, very nice. We seem to have something very nice going on, and as I said before, I often try for an easy evening, something simple, and it never seems to work. Whenever I start with something simple, it becomes complicated. This time I started something complicated, hoping it will become simple, which it can't do. But so
It'll become wildly complicated.
Definitely. So bear with me. We're going to have another light evening of existence and what it is. Hi there, Fika. Good to see you.
Ron. Thank you so much. Good to see you too.
Excellent, excellent. I've got to ask DLJ what that stands for. I can't keep on calling him DLJ, even write to him as DLJ. Where is he? I've got to know the secret of what that stands for. Is DLJ, are you there? Yes. Okay. So we've been doing this for about 2.5 years, and many of you have been here nearly every time, and we've covered a lot of topics. And what is nice here is that we get people from all over the world, more or less, and so everybody contributes his and her from their experience and their fields, and some people just sit and listen, which is absolutely fine, absolutely wonderful. And I'm hoping that the few of you who have not been here before will join us for further events and chats, etc. But we basically are here to ask questions. Why do we ask questions? Well, basically to get answers. The problem is that sometimes there aren't answers. But we're going to see whether at the end of this discussion, we'll get to an answer as to what is existence. You'll be lucky. But anyway, that's what we're going to try to do. Thomas Kuhn said, the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. Well, I would say the answers you give depend on who asked the questions. So I'm asking the questions, and they're going to be very easy, of course. Okay, questions are a form of resistance. Nothing moves without there being resistance to what would be static, and that's in science and it's art, and it's all done because of resistance against what is accepted. So I think that statements are in agreement with the accepted, while questions are non-acceptance. So we are here in order to go against the accepted. And I presume that those who come here realize that most often we're going against what is accepted. And that's what we're going to do. Does anybody remember what the second part of the title is? To be or
not to be?
To be.
That is the question.
That's exactly
Doesn't
what
matter.
that is.
Doesn't matter.
Would anybody repeat that? What the second part is? To be
Doesn't
or
matter.
no, to be or
Oh, not to be.
no. You didn't notice. I
No,
corrected Shakespeare's grammar.
Does it matter?
No.
To not be.
Wait a minute.
To not be.
Exactly.
To not be.
You noticed, yes. To be or to not be, to me,
Oh,
it makes a big difference. To
As
be
if,
or to not be. That's what he should have
As if-
said.
as if someone is deficient.
A what?
As if someone is deficient. Like
Defi-
I want to be here or be, but I'm not. So I'm deficient.
I will make no comment on that. So it is to be or to not be. And does it matter? Okay.
I'm
So
sorry, Ron. I think that really depends on what you want to achieve with that question and what Shakespeare wanted to
that
achieve.
is true. Can I just say,
Of course.
hang on. I've got to tell you again, please let me say what I want to say, and then say whatever you want. Otherwise, it'll be chaotic. If that's okay with you,
It's
but
perfect.
it has to be because it's my rules. So so let me say I'm going to do it as quickly as I can, as quickly as one can talk about existence. That is, which is anybody. Okay, so what is the purpose of existence? That is somebody would ask. But the very question presupposes that existence has a purpose, right? It would have a purpose if you believe in God or religion or gods or higher being. It means that purpose is fundamental. Now, Hegel is very, where is my friend? He's not here. Hegel is very in at the moment, and so I'm going to mention him straight away and then get rid of him without being rude. Hegel insists that the proofs for God's existence are a quite reasonable endeavor for those who seek to know God and not just know things. Okay, this knowledge is not the knowledge of another thing, or God is not a thing, but a matter of the ascent of spirit to God. So note that those who seek to show God presupposes that you believe in the existence of God. But if you don't, I would posit the purpose of existing is simply to exist. So are we searching for a purpose? Perhaps there isn't any. Should we not accept that the point is there is no point? After all, we didn't ask to exist, did we? We just do. We just exist. If there's no point, then why discuss existence? To be or to not be. Many classical philosophical problems are problems in ontology. Ontology is theory of existence. The question, for example, whether or not there is a God, or the problem of the existence of universals, etc., etc. I say that all problems are about existence, all problems. There cannot be anything else than existence if you're talking about something. Okay, so that they must all be an is, an is. They must all be an is. It's not only what is, but why is, but there's always an is. So when you think about it, everything is about existence. Everything is merely a representation of what exists. And we don't even know what exist means. So why is thinking about it important or even interesting? Would we not be better off to relax, watch reality shows on TV, and see the rich and the artificially beautiful celebrities walk down red carpets or read about their ordinary lives? Wouldn't that be easier? But obviously not for you, because you come here in order to suffer every first Sunday of the month. So it is important for you as it is for me. But we want to know why for a start. But ontology, the word ontology is a scary word. It sounds like, something we don't really want to hear about. John Bell, the physicist John Bell, called it beable, the concept of beables, i.e., it should be possible to say what is. It should be possible rather than merely what is observed. Okay, now that is hugely problematic. What is observed is not necessarily that which exists. We'll look at that in a moment. I call it isness, the isness. Anything that is accompanied by is assumes that that something exists. All we need to do now, folks, is to define existence. That's all we need to do, and we can all go home.
Easy, easy.
So, does mathematics exist? Do numbers exist? And do they exist differently from geometry? Geometry is about physical shapes, while numbers are what? What are numbers? After all, physics uses mathematical structures as representatives of physical entities and physical states. That is an explanation what supposedly exists. So in which way do numbers exist? If they don't, how do they represent things that do exist? What does 3 mean? Three on its own, what does it mean? We know what 3 dogs are. We know what 3 anythings are, but what is 3? How does 3 exist? Does law exist? How about the law? What about things like consciousness, the mind, goodness, evil, beauty, love, ghosts, fairies, pixies, Roland? Do they exist? Some would say they do, but infinity. Okay, but what about the laws of nature, of physics? Okay, do they exist because we have discovered them, or because physicists have created them? Infinity. Now that is something really strange. What about infinity? In mathematics, physics, and cosmology, we refer to it frequently as if it is understood. Does infinity exist? Mathematicians claim George Cantor cracked the puzzle in the 19th century and enabled us to understand and handle infinities. But some physicists are arguing that infinity is the greatest crisis facing physics, claiming that it generates nonsensical answers in quantum mechanics and undermines all prediction in cosmology. Infinity is a very dodgy thing. If we remove it, will infinity cease to exist? And what about language? I know that I'm going to be attacked about this. Somebody, at least one person, going to say it's all a matter of language. It's all semantics. Yeah, of course it's semantics. Everything's semantics. What I'm doing now is I'm using language. So language is a representation of things that exist. But actually, language is too approximate to give us an explanation of things that are difficult to understand. So we need a different language. But then we will need simpler language to explain what we mean. Language doesn't help us at all. Not here. For example, particles, subatomic particles, where we imagine points, but particles aren't points. If we had a word of what we can't imagine, it would not help us. We could call them dingy-bong-dongs. That doesn't help more than points. Language doesn't help us. I know somebody's going to go for me on this. From its earliest days, just over a century ago, quantum mechanics has proven itself to be a tremendously accurate, yet an intellectually problematic theory to many. Not the least of its problems is that it is a theory about the results of measurements. Particles are probabilistic and are found only when measured. The question is, do particles exist before they are measured? Do they exist before they are measured? I mean, when they are found, they must have existed before, right? That sounds reasonable. So chairs exist, right? So if we break down chairs, we cut it to its bits, you'll eventually get to atoms, okay, and subatomic particles. But those aren't a chair, right? At which point does a chair stop being a chair? Top down, right, or down up, at which point does it exist as a chair as we go up? I mean, if it's particles, then a chair is particles, which it isn't. Not as far as we're concerned. So how far do we go down in order to refer to the existence as something we're referring to, which is reductionism? We start the universe, the human as a whole, objects, the mind, cells, atoms, particles, fields and energy. But what are fields and energy made of? In which way do they exist? And what is the connection to the existence of a body? And what about art? Olga's not here. What about art? It is a representation of things that exist, supposedly, like the painting of a church, a table, a face. But do those exist? What about painting a unicorn? Does a unicorn exist? Your art is representing a uniform. Now, what about painting of a church that particular church doesn't exist? Somebody paints a church, and we all know that is a church. Does that painting of a church actually exist? And is that different from the painting of a unicorn? Why is that different? And we're going to get into reality in a minute, which is a very dodgy thing to talk about. But in any case, once we bring reality into it, we are in trouble. And this is a good point to bring in AI, since Terry is here, and I always have to bring AI in, otherwise. So AI and existence is interesting, I think. For AI to work, it does so on things that exist. The presupposition being that things exist. I suppose that AI is not concerned about existence, but that the creation of its algorithms are for things that exist according to the creators. So everything acts and reacts in relation to something else. A shout needs to be heard by us. Imagine what it would be like to shout and not hear it. Obviously, we can mention the tree in the forest, which we won't. Or if we looked in a mirror and didn't see ourselves, we know we move only because of a frame of reference. If we didn't see things passing us, we wouldn't know we were moving. In fact, we wouldn't be moving. We know we exist only because existence shouts back at us, to be or to not be. Isn't this equivalent to why is there something rather than nothing, which science and philosophy questions? This was mentioned by Leibniz, Wittgenstein, and Heidegger, the latter calling it the fundamental question of metaphysics. To be and to not be are not equivalent. There is no not being. We cannot not be. We can not be only to other people, not to ourselves. Debbie? Things that are not always were. We cannot consider something that is not without thinking of what it was. And something just has to be what was. Do you see what I'm getting at? You don't need to answer that. Being and not being are not a continuum. We are either are or we aren't. There's nothing in between. There is either is or isn't, which I would have to ask our physicists here whether that is right regarding quantum mechanics. There either is or there isn't. Gabrielle?
I don't think that is right.
That was not a question. That will come afterwards. When you all let loose freely. I can't see Adam, I can't see Emma, and I can't see Ronald, though I know who he is. Okay, the absurdist writers of the mid-20th century, from Samuel Beckett to Eugene Ionesco, reflected the existentialism in art and philosophy come out of the incomprehensible slaughter and destruction of the Second World War. An act of human irrationality so hard to derive meaning from, that humans' existence seem to be meaningless. So there are two forms of existence that we have to look at: to exist ourselves, each one of us. So if you ask me if I'm sure I exist, I would say to you, yes, I'm sure I exist. Okay, now to exist, something else existing, if you ask me if I'm sure you exist, I would say, I think so, but I can't be sure. I can only be sure of my own existence. So how are we doing with time? Not very well, actually. Terrible. So certainty is a problem, specifically about existence. Physicist Sean Carroll in a recent podcast interview said, I quote, "We humans have to get over our preoccupation with classical mechanics. Classical mechanics is not how the world works. The world is quantum mechanical. We have to get over the classical way of thinking about things," he says. When he says and emphasizes is he talking about reality, about facts? I can ask you, do facts exist? Well, obviously you would say, yes, they do. If they didn't exist, they wouldn't be facts. But then we get back to what existence is. The world is quantum mechanical. Is that a fact? So I need to talk about imagination. We can imagine only what we have seen or perceived. We cannot not be here, as I said. We cannot imagine not being here. We cannot imagine not being here, which would be equivalent to imagining being dead, not dying, but being dead, which we can't do. Okay. In quantum mechanics, it's said that anything that can happen will happen. Actually, it's the title of a book by Brian Cox and Jeff Forsyth, 2011, The Quantum Universe, Everything That Can Happen Does Happen. Well, that, of course, is nonsense. We only know if something can happen if it happens or has happened. And no, not everything can happen. If that were so, there would be no patterns and no science. So if we refer to existence rather than happening, we get anything that can exist will exist. That is nonsense as well. I prefer anything that we can imagine exists in our mind. I will get flack on this, I know. Let me just mention a 19th century Austrian philosopher, Meinong's theory of objects. So he made a difference between objects that we can imagine that actually don't exist and objects that do exist. It's an extremely short version because I'm running out of time and haven't even started yet. So certain objects can exist, like mountains and birds. Others cannot in principle ever exist, such as objects of mathematics, numbers theories, etc. I disagree. I say that anything that we can imagine exists, at least in our minds. We cannot say they don't exist. You're going to kill me on this. It's a matter of it's a matter of reality and facts, etc. So when we see a cup, an object, a cup, then we close our eyes. We imagine the cup. While Sartre makes a difference between the image and its object, where the image is consciousness of an object, there seems to be no reason to make that distinction. If, as Sartre says, the difference between the cup being as it is when we see it and as it is not when we imagine it, then it's surely a memory of what we had just seen open-eyed. Is it the same cup? Of course not. But neither is a cup the same after we have closed our eyes for a moment. We have to see Hume for that. Okay, nothing stays the same over time, not physically, and not in our memories. So, it's coming speedily towards the end of a very, very simple discussion about existence. What is imagination other than what we expect to see in the future when we open our eyes? I say that imagination is memory of what we perceived that manifests itself in what we expect. When we get out of bed after a night's sleep, we expect the floor to still be there because of the memory of its having been there. And we step on that floor also in pitch darkness, imagining the floor. Can we ever see something that we can't perceive? What would it apply to? Or in fact, what would it be if we cannot imagine it? How would we know that they're aliens if we've never seen something that we've never seen? How would we know that there's an alien there? We wouldn't even see it. Okay, so do colors exist without our perception of them? I had a big argument on Facebook with somebody about that, by the way. Red is defined as a particular wavelength. Is that what color is? How could it be if we each see a different color that we call red? Can anything just be? Musical notes are written out is not the music. They represent the music. The very notion of existence needs to be examined. Do thoughts exist? In which way? Does the past exist? How? Does it exist or did it exist? If it did, it wasn't the past then, obviously. Does the future exist? Will the future exist? If it will not be the future when we get to it. It will be the past. Okay, do aliens exist? I've already mentioned aliens. If they do, then they must have existed in the past when we didn't know about them. So have we solved what is existence? Obviously not. Is it? It is possibly, that's what I reckon, the most intractable and unanswerable question of all in whatever topic we choose. How can anything that is not be is? How can we doubt that is? Also, maybe is, isn't it? So I conclude, you lucky people, with this question. Does existence exist? And now I sit back and wait for the barbs, the arrows, etc. I open the floor to you, all you existent people. I think so. I think you exist. And DLJ, you have to tell me one time secretly what DLJ stands for. I can't keep on referring you to DLJ. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I do exist.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I wanted to know.
But my real name doesn't. So there you go. You're stuck.
Okay, that's fair. I accept that. Okay, so are you all ready for questions? Yes, Claudio.
Oh, do I have to ask a question?
No. I mean,
Yeah,
no.
I'll be quick. I'm not going to take long. I just wanted to address the beginning part when you said existence presupposes that existence has a purpose, that existence is fundamental.
No. I never said it has a purpose.
No, you that was a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, like does it? Sorry, I meant to ask that. Say that as a question.
That's better.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I believe this is just my opinion. That I think, like you said, God does have to exist in order. No, at least an afterlife has to be real in order for there to be purpose in existence. Because if you look at the two factors, the time and the quantity that's of all matter, the existence of matter, including human beings, it's quite short actually. Because let's take human beings for example. Before we were born, we didn't exist for like 13.7 billion years. And if infinity is real, then it's even longer. And we're only here for a very short time, right? So after we die, right, we won't exist for another 10 to the power of 100 years. how long it takes the universe to eventually die in heat death, right? And then even beyond that. So based on that, existence is not normal. It's incredibly rare, and not it's based on that non-existence, including matter, because even eventually black holes disappear. Is normal. Non-existence is normal. So there appears to be no purpose, right? And also, you look at the quantity of the universe, right? Only less than 5% is contained of material things. All the rest is dark energy and dark matter. So based on the quantity as well, like life existence, it's not normal. It's not the norm. So there has to be an afterlife, so our existence with the universe will continue to exist. And that would make existence very meaningful, important, and it will give it purpose. That's just my opinion, of course. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Claudio. I don't agree with that at all, by the way. I think it's very normal to exist because I feel very normal. I might not be normal, but I feel very normal, and all of us know that we exist. I think that is the norm for everybody. Existence is the norm. It has to be. The non-existence is not the norm. We wouldn't even know about it. It can't be the norm, and that's how I see it. Apart from the things that you say don't exist, like matter, antimatter, whatever you said. Well, they do, because we talk about them and we look for them, and we know that they're there. We just don't know how to find them, or something on that, in that line. Therefore, to say they don't exist is very, very speculative.
No, matter eventually will not exist. Eventually, in the distant future, matter.
I don't care. I don't care about not existing, because we are here and we do exist, and that's what we can talk about. We can't.
Is this how one-sided this group usually is?
I beg your pardon?
He just made a general observation, and I thought there were some things that resonated with what he said. You're just out of hand saying that isn't true and isn't right. Is that how this is? Is this a debate, or is this what is it? This is my first time at one of these. I don't know how these go.
No, you're right. You're right to ask. I'm giving my opinion.
Doesn't sound like it. I mean, you know, you're the host, though. You got to understand how that sounds to people.
Thank you, Adam.
When you say you are wrong.
Thank you, Adam. You can put your hand up and talk whenever you want.
I don't know how to do that. I see everybody doing that. I don't know. Where's the button for
that?
Reactions.
Reactions.
If you're using the new,
reactions. Okay, Vic. Yes.
I actually put my question in the chat because I felt that before talking about existence, we actually need to define what we mean by the word exist. Because, you know, if you're talking about unicorns existing in a certain manner, it's going to be different from numbers and geometrical figures existing, and then it's going to be different from a chair being in existence. It's going to be different from me feeling whether I exist or not. And, you know, something that you just said, Ron, you said, I feel that I exist. Well, that doesn't mean that you exist, right? Because what we feel is not always real. So to me, like the biggest problem of, you know, saying that, okay, so we exist or everything exists, whatever, is defining what we mean by exist, right? Because you know, even if what Claudia said, matter is going to stop existing, we can still say, well, it existed at some point if we believe in it, right? If we talk about historical figures that, well, they're dead, but we are reading about them in books, we've got movies about them, we are influenced by their decisions. So we could say that, well, they exist at a certain time plane, in that they still influence where we are right now. Like, well, okay, so Einstein, right? So, well, he doesn't exist in a physical sense, but, you know, people still read his books. So you could say that his ideas, so it's like, to me, the whole existence thing, you kind of have to parcel it and decide, okay, what do we agree on? Like the matter, like physical phenomenon existing, and then the purpose is a totally different story, right? Because the purpose of things existing, it could be a whole new discussion.
No, I know.
Right? Yeah. So anyway, that's just like my the thing that is most bothering me, that we haven't defined what we mean by existing before we are, assuming that things exist or we exist. Thank
No,
you.
You're right. You're right. Thank you very much. The point is, I don't think we can define it. That's hugely problematic. That's where language comes in, because all the things that you mentioned exist. And I tried to, the very, very short time I had to discuss something so difficult, and I tried to cut it down by saying something relatively simple, that what exists in our imagination. So if you talk about a unicorn not existing, I would have to say to you, I will show you a picture somebody painted of a horse with one horn. And I'll say, what's that? And you'll say, it's a unicorn, right? So I'll say, okay, fair enough. So unicorn exists. And you'll say, but it doesn't exist in real life. And I don't know what real life is if I show you something that you call a unicorn. And I agree that we would need to define existence, but we can't. And that's why I gave you so many examples to show you that to define existence would not mean that we know what existence is. All I can say is that existence is. It's the isness. So if a unicorn is, that my definition, therefore unicorn exists. That's all. I can't get any further than that. So everybody here will give their opinion of what they think existence means, and we'll all come to different opinions. And that doesn't mean that somewhere there's the reality of what existence is. Okay, does that make sense? Thank you very much, Vic. Anthony, welcome.
Welcome. Well, first of all, I have to say this is bloody amazing. I've been searching for people who have elevated their thought processes beyond just a concrete and into the conceptual. And it's been a lonely journey, but it's actually nice. So anyway, before I use up any more time, let me go into some things here. First of all, the unknown scares everybody, right? So therefore we have a tendency to want to create quote unquote concrete factual things. But as was shown, that's not necessarily that easy to do, right? So for example, as you say, what is 3? We know it's a tag that is put onto something that has, conceptually we say it's 3. Because people are afraid of the unknown, they feel, for example, that there needs to be a reason. There needs to be a purpose. I don't know if that's necessarily true. If you look seriously at it, it's hard for us not to conceive that we, as human beings, we're the apex. We are so whatever that we could have no purpose. That to our ego is a bit challenging. What I would also like to say is that we seem to bring into reality whatever we can conceive. Think about the phone in Star Trek and so forth. We brought it into reality, right? Numbers. I remember when I studied in physics, I saw where I think it was some amount, a gram of platinum in somewhere in the French museum or whatever, and that was a gram of a mass. But we all made it up. We just made it up. And the amazing thing is, we made up mathematics. We made up all these formulas, and it seems to work. How does that work? I don't understand it. We are creating reality, and it's just mind-boggling. So I don't know if I think therefore I am. Okay, is that enough of a definition for existence? I don't know. Does it really matter? That's a question. So I've taken up enough time. It's bloody amazing. I love it. All right.
No, thank you very much. The problem is with reality, and you're right. I think, that we create reality. Therefore, if we create it, in what way is it real? I mean, we'll all create different reality. So the actual word, the concept of reality is problematic, because we don't know what real is. There's my example of quantum mechanics and what is real about a subatomic particle. What is real about it? It works. We use them. Therefore, they're there in some way. Are they? Do they exist? And what do we mean by exist? And come back to what Vic said. We keep on coming back to somehow defining. And as soon as we want to define, all we can do is we can go to a dictionary and say, oh, existence is, and then we finish the discussion. Let's all look in dictionaries. It's hugely problematic. There is not only existence that's problematic, but a lot is. I mean, reality is problematic. And what we're trying to do here is to thrash out what the different ways of looking at today existence. And it makes us think. And we might come to conclusions, we might not. But listening to each other, I think helps. It's better than sitting alone and worrying about it. I think so. I mean, you might all come out of here crazy, which people usually do the first Sunday of the month, but that's okay. So thank you very much. Thank you. Agustin, hi.
Hi. Well, first of all, Ron, thank you for the meeting, as always. Very, very enlightening. So my intervention, what I'm gonna say. First of all, that I liked how the introduction was done. I really like the series of questions made. No, does law exist? Does the law exist? I also take note, does justice exist? Does the mind exist? I think it's the best way to introduce what is ontology in philosophy, because it seems really clear that things, we assume that they exist. However, we have to really ask about all these other entities. But thinking about that, it led me back to the very beginning of the introduction of your intervention, Ron. It led me to the quote from Thomas Kuhn: "The answers you get depends on the questions you ask." And it seems that actually we are asking things exist because we have certain assumptions. We are assuming we exist, that other things exist, and there are things that don't exist. And we are also assuming as well other people exist. Now, those assumptions are there, because those are the kind of questions we are asking. As Vic said as well, another assumption is that we don't understand. We struggle rather to define existence, while actually we are using it and we are believing that we exist. No, so there are a lot of assumptions behind it. No, and I was just wondering why are we assuming that all the time? Well, I'm going to quote another philosopher. I'm going to quote Levinas, who said that we are thrown into reality as it is. We don't decide to come into the world. Our parents decide for us, and we have to. So as we are thrown into the world, we are thrown into this position of considering what things exist, what thing doesn't exist. No. Another thing that I love from the introduction was that we could be watching reality shows instead of punishing our brains with these problems. But I'm wondering, will we know if reality shows are reality if we don't know what reality is? That was our joke. And on this matter, I like the position of scientific realism, in which things that are either discovered or invented by science are real. However, although science is the knowledge for truth. That's another discussion, no? Although science is the knowledge for truth, is not absolute. Knowledge change. One change that we've been mentioning all the time, we've been talking all the time about quantum mechanics. Well, once there was the truth of classic physics, and now we know that we have the truth of another physics, no? And a better example probably, and I like it a lot, is research regarding COVID-19, no? At the beginning of the research, it was believed by science that when you speak, you will expel some drops that will have the virus. So it was very important to wear a mask. But it was not believed that it could also be transmitted through air, and that changed. So kind of like the ontological frame of COVID changed because new ways of transmissions were found. That's kind of like the point of scientific realism, that yes, things that are discovered by science, and with this I finish, things that are discovered by science are real, however, they can change, no? Like one final example, no? Stephen Hawking died thinking black holes were not real because he worked all his life trying to find out what black holes were, and he died thinking they were not real in the very end. That the concept of science of what is real and what is not can be changed regarding research. So that is a point I will probably embrace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a very important point here, the difference between scientific realism and metaphysical realism. I think that's what you were getting at. Scientific realism says very, very basically that things exist whether we exist or not. And metaphysical realism very, very basically says that things exist because we think about them, i.e. we exist. Those of you who know me know that I go for the things exist because we exist. I'm usually attacked for this mercilessly, but I think that we don't exist, that nothing exists. But I've had arguments about this for 2.5 years with you lot. So I just want to mention that again. I haven't given that up yet. So thank you very much, Agustin. Ron, good to see you.
Yes, thank you, Ron. I have a very simple question to ask you that could even take a yes or no answer. And actually, this question is really for everyone, but I'll address it to you. The question is, did you exist before your parents conceived you? Yes or no?
You want me to answer that?
If you like.
No.
No. There you go, it's unanimous.
Why did you
So,
ask?
okay, so I'm only posing this question as a thought-provoking question. I mean, I would answer it, but my answer would definitely has the provisional, I don't know, I just believe. But if I were to answer it, my answer would be yes. But I would also say that I understand I would be in a vast minority of people. Most people I understand would say, no, I did not exist before my parents conceived me. But what that question does, it begs the issue, is existence dependent on this body mind or not? Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to, go off too far on a tangent here.
No, it's okay. Tangents are part of the game. But okay. Okay, I answered it. No, I can't see how we can exist before we exist. But okay, well.
But
He's asking a more broad question than that.
To make a point. In other words, your existence is dependent on Ron Green existing.
Of course.
And
yes.
if Ron Green doesn't exist, does anything exist?
Not as far as Ron Green is concerned, no.
Okay, but who cares about Ron Green?
I do.
I know.
But
Again,
that's the
again,
whole
I'm
point.
making some points.
No, no.
Yes, I'm making some
We
points
understand that.
about here.
No. But that's the whole point, is that I do care because I exist. If I don't exist, I wouldn't care. Right? That's
Yeah, but if you didn't exist, would I exist?
not for me. No.
Okay, these are just
No, fair enough.
provocating questions, that's all.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. They're good questions.
Maybe some other people might want to, chime in a bit on that question.
Yeah, can we
I'm
discuss
sure
some
they
of
will.
these
Adam,
things?
hang on, Adam. James. Hi. James? Can't hear you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah, I do want to answer Ron's question.
Which one?
I'm sorry.
There are
That
two of
guy,
us
Ron
now.
Rubin. Ron
Okay.
Rubin. Maybe your question later. Yeah, I think we exist before we're born as a potentiality. In other words, because we can point to genetics as a source of recognition, a source of explaining lineage. Then because we can we know the process of explaining genealogy, we can assume that we exist as a potentiality. And philosophically, that's what I think is a problem for a lot of people. They don't really understand the relationship between potentiality and actuality. Maybe what I say later will hinge on that to a certain extent. I wanted to refer to Hegel and Aristotle on ontology. Hegel says that the doctrine, ontology, is the doctrine of the abstract characteristics of being, which would be like existence, Hegel's word for existence. And ontology is the way you solve problems of existence metaphysically. And the science that you need to employ to solve the problems of existence. Aristotle had 6 categories of existence. Number 1, essence. Number 2, being. Number 3, unity. Number 4, manyness. That could give that's a clue for your question about mathematics, Ron. Number 5, substance. Any physicists here? They might understand that importance. And I think you touched on that. And number 6, phenomena as a whole. In other words, phenomenology. So Aristotle was his point of view was very much constructed from an empiricist, was very much an empiricist point of view, but so was Hegel, even though Hegel was representing a new philosophy in the 19th century known as idealism. So, but he was extremely empirically minded in terms of how he constructed his ideas about existence and being. And how he constructed his, but he was more concerned with the ontology of metaphysics and how that could be used across all human endeavors, whether it was law, science, or philosophy, or for that matter, religion. So, and I guess the one thing that always strikes me is this idea that you have about the future, that the idea that is if something is in the past, it's no longer the future, and that sort of like disables the future. It shows something illegitimate about that part of our imaginations, that we can imagine things in the future. But you seem to, your philosophy is largely based on imagination. You say that existence is normative. You didn't use that word, but you said that it's normal to believe in existence or something like that. And you said that absolute, so that existence, substantial existence exists in the imagination. So that substantially existence is in the imagination. And of course, that's an interesting statement. But on the other hand, there are parts of imagination is really only one part of thinking. So I think to sort of like load up the thinking on one side, saying that existence is imaginative, is sort of loading it up. And then you contradict yourself when you say, well, if we think about the future, we're not actually considering existence, because we refute that, because as soon as the future becomes the past, it's no longer the future. So therefore, your whole theory about time, that the future can't exist, because the past, the fact that there is a past, shows that a future is impossible. And then, but then, so that was interesting that you mentioned those things again in this talk. But the talk was interesting because you mentioned a whole lot of other things, which are probably, many of those are probably somewhat true about existence. But existence, I don't think existence is strictly imagination. The idea that there are strict limits to imagination, like you say, the other thing limit you have, one limit is the future. The other limit you have for imagination is death. You say it's impossible to imagine being dead. So in other words, you create yourself, arbitrary limits on imagination, while enabling definitions of things as being imagination, like existence being imagination. And at the same time, creating arbitrary limits on imagination. We can't imagine ourselves dead. We can't imagine anything in the future, and so on and so forth. But so those are sort of troubling contradictions for me. I liked when you said existence is reflexive. It shouts back at us, or maybe somebody else said that, but I forget, maybe it was someone else that said that, but I like that idea. I think it was you, that existence is reflexive. It shouts back at us. And, but what I disagree with, and I think this is really important, a very important idea in Hegel, is that nothing is not impossible. Nothing is a fact of life. There are lots of nothings in the world, and a lot of these occur in science. We couldn't possibly have made the progress we've made in science if we didn't believe in nothing. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Shane. Adam, can I just answer that before I get to you? Is that okay? James, you made a very, very interesting point about the future, and I had to think about that. Thank you for that, but I just want to answer it because I have said that we can never get to the future, never. We can imagine what is in the future, yes, but we will never get to it, because when we get to it, it will be the past. It will be, oh yes, that happened. Tomorrow never comes. Now I can imagine what will be tomorrow, and that will now we get to a difficult point about existence. And you're right to bring it up, and I thank you for that, because the future, I can imagine what's gonna happen there, but that doesn't mean that it does not mean that will exist as anything real. And I did mention that bringing reality into it is extremely problematic, because we have to decide what's real and what isn't. And we have no idea what's real. And we really have no idea. And I can only get back to quantum mechanics, and anybody who says what's real there would be in a difficult position, because what does it actually mean? But I have to think again about the future, and thank you for bringing that in. That was very nice, very good. Adam.
Getting to the future would be the present. That's all. That's my point. Getting there would be called the present.
But you see,
it's and also and once again, what I started with, the idea that potentiality just isn't understood well. It was discussed at great length by Aristotle, but of course we're warned when I went to elementary school, I was warned not to read Aristotle. Now I've read Aristotle and I realized what a great genius he was. But there's this idea that there's no potentiality. Yeah, there's potentiality, and that helps us understand things that haven't existed, the possibilities of existence or the potentialities of existence that haven't happened. And without that, we don't have true science. That's part of applying our mind to variable quanta in our existence. It's constantly things that constantly pass through our mind about not just now, but the future as well.
I disagree with you on potentiality. I can't see how potentiality exists apart from being potential. But okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to get back to that. Adam, your turn. Sorry about that. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So just to jump in on some of the things that, I mean, it seems like we're getting really held up on semantics because a lot of this, it just depends on what word you're using to define whatever you're referencing to, whatever you're referencing. The idea of, I mean, if you believe that Einstein was onto anything, you know, his perspective is that time, both past and future and present exist all at once, and that we're just basically navigating through that, but that they do exist. The future exists in some way now, and by getting caught up on, if we go to the future, then it's not going to be the future because it'll become the past. It's like there's a broader like reality here, and you know, we're talking about these really complicated subjects like reality and existence. And I love that. I love that about this channel. The list of questions you had at the beginning were like, wow, that could be, each one of those could be an entire discussion. But, you know, to make a statement about existence is inherently a statement about reality, as in versus non-reality. And it seems like we have to start with some sort of definition of reality first. And the just basic facts of the matter is that we do not see reality the way that it is. We have an incredibly limited view of the color spectrum, incredibly limited view of the sound spectrum. We don't see the Earth's magnetic shield like pigeons do. That's why they're called homing pigeons. I mean, a butterfly sees 43 individual colors. We see 3. All the other colors we see are made of those 3. Can you even imagine one other color? And if we can't imagine it, does that mean that it doesn't exist for that butterfly or in some region somewhere? Jumping back to the idea of chairs existing, I mean, I think that really just putting what the definition of existence aside for a minute, all that you can really say that exists are our perceptions and the stories that we tell ourselves internally about what those perceptions are. Really anything out beside, I mean, there is no way to interact materially with the outside world. I mean, you know, if you were ever to actually touch your table or touch that can of soda in your hand, and those atoms were to actually touch each other, you'd set off a nuclear explosion. I mean, you don't actually even physically come into contact at an atomic scale with the things in your reality, in your world. And so I would say is that, for example, a chair, you'd have to get down to the most basic, you call that a subatomic particles or an atom, but chairs are just a bunch of atoms arranged chair-wise. You know, you can't really say that it is or isn't a chair because there's no, a chair is just a concept. And a concept that varies, you know, from person to person and even sort of region to region or, you know, culture to culture. So is anybody here familiar with Donald Hoffman and his work about reality?
Yeah.
That's some really interesting stuff. And I've been really fascinated. I mean, he takes it way beyond, you guys have heard that like all atoms are all empty space and that, you know, like practically nothing's there. The space between atoms and inside atoms is just empty. And so, you know, people are saying, well, why do we see the world that we do? he takes it way beyond there. Somebody said earlier about, looking at an object and then closing your eyes and imagining the object. I can't remember what the object was.
Cup.
What was that?
A cup.
The
I
cup,
think.
yes. Okay. Donald would say that cup does not exist when you close your eyes, because the cup that you see with your eyes open does not exist. That even is a projection of your mind and a projection onto reality. And as soon as you sort of throw that into your little garbage bin, it sort of doesn't exist in some respect. I'm still trying to understand it, but there's just really interesting stuff there.
Thank you very much, Adam. I agree with almost everything you said about perception. That's very, very important part of my philosophy. Perception, I agree with you. Once you said that, you have a tremendous problem with reality. Because if it's all perception, then somewhere we can't assume that there is reality, because we can never get to it, because they've got a different perception of what there is, the is business. So reality is hugely problematic, and I keep away from it. And as soon as somebody says that's real, I grit my teeth and try not to say anything, usually unsuccessfully, by the way. But I don't agree with what Donald says at all. You talk about consciousness as the original sin.
I'm still trying to understand what he means by that. Exactly, I get the idea.
I know. I've been listening to him a lot, and I've been trying to understand what he's saying, and I'm not sure he does, but it sounds good and it sells books. But that's being very sorry about that.
He's definitely onto something. Whether it explains it, it's as explanatory as he thinks, is a different debate.
All of us here are onto something, right? So whether it's real or whether it isn't, or whatever it is, we're all onto something, and it's wonderful that we are. But some things you accept for some reason, right? But that's a whole new meeting about why we agree with certain things. That's a really dodgy part. I wouldn't even try to do that. But thank you very much, Adam. That was very, very interesting. Thank you. Anybody who speaks
I lost
can come.
what we were talking about.
Pardon? Who's talking now?
Talking about
who are we talking about? Donaldson.
Donaldson.
But by the way, anybody who's talked can come back into line again. Obviously, you've got lots more to say, like James, I know. But okay, thank you very much, Adam. And now, and Anton, you're next.
Okay. So yeah, all right. Well, I could still take this, like, I mean, the whole thing is interesting, but there's one direction I could take this. So here is but it once again doesn't have to be the word existence or exists. Here's a possible definition for it. It's a form in our awareness. A cup is a form in our awareness. A unicorn, at least in the mind, is a form in our awareness. I'm not saying that's all existence is, but and like Vic said earlier, different types of existence or different planes. I'm not sure what Vic said. Great to see Vic here, by the way. I've been seeing Vic in a long time. So but I guess a couple of things I'll add to that. I'll make this pretty brief, because you already talked about perception, Ron, and I'm not sure if I have anything that different to say about that. But just because something is a form in our awareness doesn't mean it exists. So that goes back to perception. But what do animals perceive? What forms are in their awareness is an interesting thing to think about to me. Not that we could ever know necessarily from a firsthand perspective, but I'll keep it that brief.
Thank you very much. I'm going to say something that you'll all throw things at me. Sorry, but I'm not really interested in how animals see things. Right? Now, I'm sorry about that. I know you won't like me to say that, but what I'm interested in is philosophy. and the ones who are doing philosophy are human beings. And if I say that when we're not here, when we individually do not exist, then nothing exists for us, for everybody else, yes. And then somebody will say to me, what about animals? But I'm not interested in the animals. Seriously, not interested. And I know that's a shocking thing to say, but I sometimes say shocking things, and I sort of live through it. And you must understand, or you try and understand where I'm coming from, that philosophy is for us. And for somebody to say that when that person ceases to exist, things will continue to exist, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. All it means is that it continues to exist for other people. Now, if somebody is dead, then nothing exists for that person. If everybody in the whole world is dead, the conclusion I come to is that nothing exists. There is nothing for it to exist for. That is, I know, controversial. I understand that. If not, I'm very pleased if anybody agrees with me. But that is a cardinal thing in what I've been espousing.
Cardinally wrong.
I'm wrong about
That's
what?
wrong. That's,
What am I wrong about? Everything. I understand.
have you read Tom Nagel's on being a bat?
And yes, I have, but I'm not impressed. Seriously,
You're
I'm
not
not
impressed with one of the most leading philosophers of our time?
I'm not impressed. No.
Okay, wow. The
Sorry.
philosopher who philosophers tip their hat to? Okay, interesting. It seems like you have a real authority on all of this stuff.
No,
but...
no. Please don't be rude. I have no
Oh, I'm
authority.
being rude.
Yes, I have
Okay.
I have no authority whatsoever. I am giving my opinion, my philosophy, of which I've written about, and we'll continue to talk about whether you like it or not. I don't mind that you don't like it. I don't
Talk
mind
about your opinion. You just can't tell that everybody's
yeah,
wrong if they disagree with
wait.
you.
No,
What is this,
please.
fascist philosophy?
First of all, it's not your turn.
You watch, if I get dropped, you'll know why I got dropped.
Yes, but I won't drop you. Don't worry. You will have to drop yourself. I have a philosophy. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me at all.
No, you'll just berate us and then tell us that we're wrong. And then
No.
shut us up.
No. First of all, I will say what my philosophy is. And if I think that you're wrong, I will tell you. You can tell me I'm wrong as well. I don't mind. I've been told I'm wrong for a long time. I'm not bothered by what you tell me.
You get to speak after everybody, Ron.
No.
No.
If you're going to speak like that, then really the group doesn't talk the way you do. Okay? This group's been going on for wait, no, I'm talking. 2.5 years. 2.5 years this group's been going on, and we get on very, very well. Now I tell I'm talking. When I tell everybody.
Not a discussion. Never discussion.
I tell everybody on here that they're wrong, and they still come.
And
they still come. Will you please not? Will you please not argue with me? I don't want. No. That's not how it works here.
Okay.
Not how it works. You have to keep quiet when I tell you to. That's how it works. Okay. If you don't like it, you can
I understand what philosophy you're
of. If you don't like it, you can leave. I think some of the things that you said are right, and some of the things, as far as I'm concerned, are wrong. That's how it works.
I don't care. I want to know
what
other people
I don't
think,
want you to. I don't want you to argue with me. I don't. This is not an argument. Your turn is over. When it's your turn again, you can come on and tell me how wrong I am.
I don't want to come on. I want to hear what other people have to say.
Please go.
You're making this unfun.
Can you please stop?
Everyone disagrees, not only Ron, even us disagree with Ron. It's okay, like it's not fascist. I don't know. That's too strong a word. Like Ron isn't the only one who disagrees with people. We also, I've been coming and I see a lot of people disagree with Ron strongly. Ron doesn't mind, so why should we mind? But to use the word fascist, that's unjustified, I think.
Okay, I'm just going to say something, Ron. It's off the bat. Let us appreciate something. For structure to occur, we do need a head. He is facilitating, and he's trying to make things work between everybody. And it is really opinions. And he does have experience and so forth. So even from a perspective of old-fashioned respect, I would think that, it's okay, that's just my thoughts. And I'm new to this, so excuse my ignorance.
I'm very pleased to have you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Roland, welcome back to the land of whatever.
Hello. Yeah. Gosh, a lot of interesting material. I made a few notes. It's funny because having had pretty much 4 months off sailing, I'm feeling a bit blurry about philosophy. So, so forgive me if I ramble a bit. I suppose the thing that is possibly a starting point is this issue of what existence means. And pretty much anything you kind of go for is going to have something thrown at it. But I quite like the idea of continuity. So in my own philosophy, the observer is central, because there is only, whenever we say this is, we are making an evaluation. We're making an assertion of evaluation, and someone has to do that. Like, for example, when we ask something like, what is the purpose of existence? That's a bogus question, because we're trying to objectify existence and create a notional imaginary observer that can answer it for us. How are we going to get to that? Well, we can't. So isness, as you put it, Ron, I think lies at the center of the whole issue, because someone has to decide whether something exists or not. So the next question is, what are the properties that we relate to or we look for when we talk about existence? And I think that, that there is a language issue there, but I think that, to my mind, the best thing I've come to that kind of seems to capture the idea is the notion of continuity, and in particular continuity of organization. Now, the reason I say that is because the idea of something carrying on for a period of time, however short it may be, is the only way in which we can recognize anything. It's even if it's a microsecond and we have identified something with some electronic apparatus that has endured for a microsecond, then we have identified something. There are a lot of problems with this as well, though, because basically I'm talking about continuity of sameness, when something remains the same for a period. But of course, nothing remains the same for a period. So even there, we have to water it down and look for patterns. So basically what I'm saying here is that existence, in my way of thinking, it relates to continuity of recognizable patterns. And so the next question, of course, after that is, can there be different types of existence? Well, I think there can be. I can demonstrate that fairly easily with my pencil here. Here is a pencil. My pencil exists. Now I have an experience at the moment of seeing and holding this pencil. And so there is a quality of existence that I'm experiencing here. But if I put that pencil behind my tablet here that I'm using, I can't see it anymore. I have a memory of that pencil going there, and I think it exists behind there. And if someone said to me, could you hand me the pencil behind your tablet, I would reach behind and grab it, because I would know it's there, behind there. But it's not the same quality of existence as holding it and looking at it. So here I'm differentiating between two types of existence. In each case, there is continuity. Continuity in the first case, because I have a continuous experience of holding, seeing the pencil, whatever. Continuity in the second case, because I have a continuous experience of believing that the pencil is there, a memory that it's there, that won't go away. So, I mean, that's just two basic areas of existence or types of existence. But I think there are a great deal more. I would say there are a very large number of types of existence that we use day to day that we then differentiate between. And some of those differentiations are quite subtle, like you can feel happy. Well, where is that? Where does that exist? But it does exist because there is a continuity of an experience that, even though it's changing, has the appearance of sameness to it. So that's kind of an outline of my thoughts around existence and what we can do with that. When it comes down to purpose, as I said at the beginning, I don't think we can attribute purpose to anything outside our evaluation capability. So the search for a notional purpose for life or being or whatever we call it seems to me to be a fruitless wild goose chase, because we're basically looking for something that we know we can never find, because the properties that we're looking for in this notional observer are that they can't be accessed by us. So, you know, we've lost the game before we started on that one. So meaning and purpose, to my mind, is only available within us, within ourselves. And that is where I think one has to look for it. So when people say that life is meaningless or there's no point to our lives, I think what they're doing is they're looking for this outside, apparently external, impossible to access reference and not finding it. But to my mind, as I said, there's no point looking for it. I think one has to look inside to find within one's own evaluation to go, well, okay, my life is meaningful because, well, because I'm existing, I suppose. So I think that probably summarizes the points I was going to make. So yeah, continuity of organization and the value and the location where is happens. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ron. I just want to make one point about the pencil and putting it somewhere else. Is that not what I mentioned when I said closing your eyes? It comes to the same thing. I have a pencil, I close my eyes and the pencil is still there, and I open my eyes and it existed when I closed my eyes as well, just like your pencil exists behind that. And so even if I don't close my eyes, the pencil is changing. And if I close my eyes and open them again, it's not the same pencil. So and the way I can get past that is by saying simply that what we can imagine, because when the pencil is over there, you imagine the pencil is there. That's why you pick it up and somebody asks you. When I close my eyes, I imagine whatever it is still there. So I simply say that existence is what we can imagine. That's it. It's an overall it's an overall definition of existence, and I can't find any other way of talking about existence unless we talk about reality. Does a unicorn exist? Is it real? Then we get into complete more difficult positions. All I'm saying is quite simply, and it's not simple, that what we can imagine exists and exists in our minds, and I reckon that it's something to consider. It was just one way of getting through the whole business of existence. Thank you very much. Before I go on to you, William, can Gabrielle, Emma, Vic, and Adam please put on their cameras? I do like to see who we are. I think it's more friendly. Thank you. Vic, Emma, thank you very much. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you, Roland. William, Bill, sorry for the wait.
Not a problem.
It's all yours.
I'm trying to recall my grammar that says that is a linking verb that connects an object or a subject with a property. Bill is fat. The idea that Bill is fat is not an issue of existence, but it's a question of the properties that Bill has. Is he big in the center? Is he overweight? Is he gross? Does he belch? Those kinds of things. The way we are using this issue of existence, it sounds to me more like a property than a connecting verb. And if it's a connecting verb, I'm puzzled about how you impute properties to a verb. I don't get it. And I have this puzzle that goes on that says, is this a reification mistake? Can you reify a verb? You can reify a fact. You can reify a property, fat Bill, but the idea that we can reify a verb is a puzzle. And it raises the question of whether or not the words we use in the question that Kuhn raised is the question of whether or not our behavior, in verbal behavior specifically, is a way of talking about a useful conversation that aids our behavior in the world, not whether it reifies the world, refers to the world, or reflects the world exactly. It is a way of accommodating pragmatically with the world to get our stuff done. And to that extent, I think there may be a reification in the whole question of, is existence a property, or is it just another way of saying a connecting verb like is? Because Ron, you've talked about isness as the essence of the question, but that's a connecting verb. It's not a property. And properties and verbs have to be distinguished, it seems to me. And in the sense that you raised the question also about to be or not to be, or whatever variation you used, I happen to think that is a really, really profound question for me, particularly in my maturity, because I am at a point now where I examine my existence and say, where have I been and where the hell am I going? And when I raise that question to myself, I go back to saying, well, what's my legacy? Has it been worth a shit? And if it isn't, what can I do about changing it if I have time to change it? So the issue of to be or not to be is a question of a choice of where I go from here, having been there. And I think that is a critical moral question for us all. And it is the core of the literature. It is a core of the character issue that confronts every character in a drama, every character in a novel, and every character in a play. Where the hell am I going from this crisis? Where am I going from this existential condition? And where are my interests? Where are my concerns? Where are my variables who are in my context? How do I cope and manage all of that going forward? How I do that is the reality of my choice, and how I act on that is the reality of the situation. My words don't refer to anything. They refer to the kind of appropriate behavior to a set of interests and circumstances that I'm confronting. That's the way I see it. And the question is, how do we measure that? By the consequences of the choices we make. Anyway, that's my thought.
Thank you very much, Bill. I just want to refer to is, which was the center of what I postulated. I'm lucky because I know the verb to be as being a stative verb, not linking, but a state. So that and that sums it up. Is a state, the state of being, and I don't see how something cannot be is when you're talking about it, because it is. Everything you said was an is, basically. Now you call it linking. That's okay. I see is as a state, the state. That's what I wanted to mention about it is. It is such an important word, such an important word. I think we use it more than any other one. I think so. Everything is, and so that anything that is exists. So that's what I wanted to mention about is. But thank you very much. So very interesting. You didn't mention the law that I asked whether it exists. I thought you might pick that one up.
I could do that if you want.
Yes, do it. I put that in for you, by the way.
Anyway, the practice of law is similar. When someone asks you for advice, they're asking you about what behavior makes sense in the context of the rules and the interests that you and the context have in relationship to you. It is a way of affecting behavior that you can say is appropriate to a set of circumstances. The law is dealing with issues of appropriate behavior, not reference. It's a question of the mix of the context and how I can best navigate them to accomplish what I want to do. And that's what I have done all the time in my legal career. And I think it's all what we do anywhere in our relationship. We don't have a reference point in mind. We have an outcome in mind. And the outcome is doing it in a way that is best for the circumstances. Anyway, that's my sense.
Definitely. But does the law exist? That was my question. It obviously does.
It does. You open the book and you say the rule, but the rule's relevance is not its presence in the rule book, but in its function in the context of your choice.
Okay.
That's the issue.
Fair enough.
All right.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you. Michael, sorry for the wait. It was a long wait today.
Okay, several interesting aspects of this topic, but let me try to address two of them. So I agree with what Anton said, that our existence is actually based on our perception. And unless we accept a strict sort of solipsism, and unless we assume that only I exist and everything else is just a figment of my imagination, then we have to accept that other things also exist. Other people, animal, physical systems, and so on. And what we are struggling with often, that we invent some words and then we are trying to make sense of how to apply these words to whatever we feel, whatever we experience. But other things that exist, they don't have necessarily the words for this. Maybe they don't have any words at all. They still can feel something. Maybe even not only biological systems, maybe even physical systems can feel something. But they don't have a word for it. They simply exist. So all these discussions about whether unicorns exist or whether our whatever imaginary entities exist, they all only, we have them because we are struggling with these words. But at the same time, we probably have to consider existence as not just black and white, but it may have some gradations, because even in physics, what are virtual particles? So they exist in some sense because we can measure the collective effect of these virtual particles on some real systems that we can measure. But is it the same status of the existence as the real particles? I am not sure, and I think that even many physicists don't have agreement on this. Then there is such thing as quasi-particles, like phonons, plasmons, and so on. So they are sort of made up of many real particles, but they have also measurable effects, and very interesting and important one, like this Kuiper space that are responsible for superconductivity and so on. So do they exist? Again, I suppose that in some sense they do exist. They interact with other systems. They have some measurable effects. But do they exist in the same sense as, say, electrons or atoms? Well, you can define the mathematical formalism where they are described by the same equations or very similar equations. But physically, I don't know about interpretation. And the same thing can apply to us and to animals and so on. So we usually don't question that we exist. So for me, it's obvious that I exist, right? But there are also some things that exist in my mind, in my imagination, those proverbial unicorns or whatever. So do they exist in the same sense as I do? I am not sure, but in some sense they do exist, right? Because say I can draw a unicorn, right? So we can even understand when we are talking about unicorns approximately how they look, for instance. So probably it's just not like binary logic whether the thing exists or does not exist. Maybe there are some different gradations between existence and non-existence. And again, even if non-existence is real, because physical vacuum is not nothing, right? It's a very complex physical system, in fact. So maybe I'd rather have to say about different gradations of existence and different kinds of existence.
I agree about that, definitely. I can't think of anything that does not exist. Maybe we should try to try and imagine what doesn't exist. I think it's very
Can you
difficult.
imagine another color?
Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay.
Thank you. Terry, it was a long wait.
And I've quite forgotten what it was I was going to talk about.
That's why I let you wait.
Adam's brief mention of the word color did remind me, I think it was part of that conversation. Ron, with your permission, could I let Adam talk a little bit here, just to say what he was about to say?
Yep, no problem.
What was that?
I was just going to say, if you would mind, you mentioned color, if you would go ahead and talk about what you wanted to talk about.
Well, just mentioning, it's a little bit of a lighter argument or lighter point that I'm making, but harkening back to the thing I said about butterflies, like cats can see six colors, so something like that, four to at least one additional color than us. Butterflies can see something like 43 different colors. I mean, what are they looking at?
The sensors are amazing, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, we cannot, there's literally no way that you can imagine a color. You can't like biochemically consciously like do it, but it does exist in the way that colors exist, which is like then that gets into a different argument. Like our colors aren't really an inherent property of the thing that we see as colored. That's just it absorbing certain light, and the rest of it like hitting our eyes, and then our brains perceiving it a certain way. So
The argument
just another question opens up more questions.
The argument I often make to people, and that when they get too wrapped up in like blue color, red color, the sensory, is I consider in my mind, and I can think green, blue, red. There's no photons involved with that. There's no external stimulus involved with that. Something's going on inside of my head, and we don't really know what it is. I did want to mention I think I mentioned it in the comments, there is an actual study that I just was participating in the review of it, where the Air Force is literally trying to see if they can get a human to see another color that is not in their sensory system. And the amount of computer technology required to do this targets individual photoreceptors in their eyes, create colors that are not possible. So for whatever it's worth, it's interesting that technology is actually getting to a point where it may start touching on philosophy and some of those issues. So I think that's a deeply intriguing issue of what does it mean to be a color, to have a color, to see a color. So at any rate, that is just an intriguing point, because I remember you said that earlier. I liked that. I thought that was an interesting area and fascinating area. And Ron, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I thought you were going to go on about AI a bit. That's why I put it in.
I think I had a thought earlier on it, but honestly, lots of interesting points people have made, and I'm just not. To me, AI is just a machine, and humans, whatever we're doing, is kind of the starting point. So I can't think of anything coherent, cogent to say about that right now.
Okay.
But I think I had some fleeting thoughts, but I kind of lost it somewhere there. So I will advocate at this point.
Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you. James, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, this reminds me of how startling your philosophy is, Ron. I think that's I think that's one of the really interesting things about this meetup. Keeps people coming back. And you didn't disappoint us this time. I thought your talk was very good starting point for other people to mention things. Some of the things that have been mentioned, like the idea of the model of the Donald Hoffman model of reality, and or modeling reality, so I think Hoffman is equally. I think Hoffman is a philosopher a little bit like in the same kind of vein as you, Ron. He's shocking. His arguments can be a little bit shocking, but the idea of a model of reality goes back to definitely goes back to Plato, and perhaps earlier than that. And it's something that we need to sort of see. And this is what Anton brought up, that objects, a way to see it is that objects can be forms in our awareness. But I just wanted to mention that the objects always exist in a context. So there's always this, or in a situation. So the objects exist in a situation, and that is how they are brought to our awareness because of the situation that we share with them. So, so I think that's an important feature, the idea of phenomenology, the idea that we don't just know about objects, but we share a situation in which objects exist for us. And in those situations, we develop these opinions, or what Roland Mann was talking about, the idea of continuity, of organization, or what some people would say was a substantiality of the objective of the objects. And then you had a great discussion back and forth about how does this actually occur when I blink my eyes. And so this, because how can I defend the fact that the object has changed for me? And but that goes back again to the context as existing in time and necessarily changing. And so I think there's kind of like this idea of there has to be a belief in change. There has to be an understanding that in phenomenology, things necessarily change. And I wonder if this is what Derrida means by the trace, because I'm uneducated. I haven't read enough Derrida. I don't know what he means by all these amazing concepts sometimes. So I don't know if that's what he meant by the trace, but the idea that, there's something that was already there that causes us to already understand something that we will understand in the future, that we will actually witness in the future. So how is it that we, based on this past knowledge, are able to understand things as soon as we see them? What is that trace? What is that continuity of organization that stands in for us as a message, internal message that projects our understanding of future events? So that's a fascinating aspect of sensation and understanding phenomenology. So I just want to, there's a whole science to this, the whole science of modeling reality and kind of projecting our ideas and opinions, from about objects of sensation. Of course, we're not butterflies. We can't quite do things perfectly in the sense, or more perfectly, in the sense that we might attribute behaviors to other species and things like that, or to aliens or whatever. But we also can kind of like have a good grasp of what happens in our own consciousness. And I hope this satisfies too. Roland gave another criteria. He said it has to satisfy meaning and purpose. So I hope it satisfies that idea too, that having a realistic phenomenology, a developed phenomenology, is what helps us satisfy our idea of meaning and purpose. And I think Bill gave us a good example of that, how we satisfy specific requirements of aspects of existence, human existence, in one case in law, for example, by our ability to turn our purpose to by narrowing down purposes. So that was a really good kind of like reference to normal human life. In other words, purpose does have to enter into the equation when we're talking about phenomenology. So I think it's a great discussion as usual. Thanks.
Thank you very much, James.
Could I just interject on one thing that James mentioned, which might be of use, which was about the trace. I was thinking about this some time ago, and it just so happened I was also reading Winnie the Pooh to my kids, and the story I can recommend in spades that that captures this idea of self-referential traces is the story where Winnie the Pooh goes hunting for a woozle. So I'll leave it at that, but it's a really worthwhile thing reading because it's got something. Maybe Derrida had read it too. I mean, I don't know if it was written before him or not.
I think it was. Yeah.
Thanks, Ronald. Ron.
Yes, well, First of all, thank you, Roland. I always like to follow somebody who lightens things up a bit. So first of all, an apology. I raised my hand well over half an hour ago when I didn't have any questions, but I figured by the time I had some questions, I would probably have some questions. If not, I could always lower my hand. I actually came up with about 4 questions. I would preface it also by saying, these are all questions. I don't have answers. I'm really good at questions. The answers, I'm very touchy-feely about putting forth answers, but questions I love. That's my philosophical nature. So four things that I'd like to make quick points on. One is about potential. And for people who like science, I would recommend highly that you look into the quantum mechanics of David Bohm. He talks about a way of seeing existence, what he calls the implicate and the explicate order. The implicate order is basically defined as infinite potential, but nothing manifest, but infinite potential. And he says the explicate order is when something comes out of that implicate order and it explicates it, it manifests for a time being, and then it returns back it unfolds and enfolds. It goes back into the implicate order. That's very scientific with, equations and Einstein's blessing and all kinds of stuff. That's just one thought for people who are into, science, things that have to matter and make sense. You could see built into our language all of the biases we have. It has to matter. It has to make sense. So for people who like that kind of stuff, that was thought number 1. Thought number 2 is very simple. It's an old spiritual analogy of the waves in the ocean. And that, is there any difference between the wave and the ocean? And you could think of it in terms of the implicate and the explicate order. From time to time, waves arise out of the ocean. They explicate for a while, and then they unfold back into the ocean. So what is real here? Is the wave real, even though it only appears for a temporary, instant or two, and then it unfolds back? Or is it the ocean? If all the oceans became totally calm, and there were no waves, there would still be the ocean would be there. Anyway, again, these are just questions that to get people thinking about these things. Third one, continuity of of existence. The question is, when I'm in deep sleep, do I exist? Am I conscious when I'm in deep sleep? And for most of us, the answer appears to be, no, I'm not conscious in deep sleep. Okay, so that raises a question. Is this consciousness then not continuous? Does it have gaps in it? Are these gaps connected by something, memory or whatever? Or what is this? What is this consciousness that we associate with existence? What is this consciousness? Question 3. Question 4 is a statement, in a sense, that consciousness, what you're looking for is that which is doing the looking. That's why you can't objectify that consciousness, because it's the consciousness itself that is doing the looking. So consciousness, like the waves, may come and go, but the ocean of awareness is always there. So I would say that those are my 4 points about potential, about the relationship between waves and ocean, between, in deep sleep, where do we go in deep sleep? And finally, that which we're looking for is what's doing the looking. Now, that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Ron. I have a problem with infinity, as I mentioned, and I'm not quite sure how to handle that at all.
Well, you can't. The mind can't handle infinity. It's as simple as
Exactly.
that. Exactly. But you can. The mind can say, okay, as mind, as a tool, I am an inadequate. I concede it's an inadequate tool because it's you're trying. What you're trying to understand is what's looking. You have to step back from the mind.
Stepping back from the mind is problematic.
Of course it is, and that's why it's such a rarity in the history of humanity. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen oftentimes without lots of preparation and hard work.
What is it that steps back from the mind?
Awareness or being.
Well, that's not part of the mind.
No. The mind is subject objects. It's a duality. It's a reflection of aware. Consciousness is a reflection, like a wave is a temporary manifestation of the ocean. Our consciousness is a reflection. It doesn't exist in and of itself, consciousness. It is dependent on the pure awareness or the implicate order.
Does consciousness exist?
As a temporary appearance.
So it does exist?
As an appearance.
Okay.
Yes, as an appearance. But reality is, so I distinguish in language between appearances versus reality. Appearances are temporary, they come and go. Reality is permanent, it's eternal, has no beginning, no end, has no shape, no form. And yet it's infinite potential. That's how I would define reality. Consciousness is a magnificent experience, an amazing instrument, but ultimately it's a dual. It operates on binaries of subject and object.
Yeah, as I said before, reality, once you bring reality in, you're in there's a bit of a problem. Because if we can't get ever to reality, in which way does reality exist?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that we can't get there. All I'm saying is that you're not going to ride there on the vehicle of the mind.
Okay, no, it's only about reality. If we can never get to it, then what is reality? I mean,
I didn't say we can never get to it.
So,
I just said you can't get to it with the mind. With the consciousness will not get you there. You have to go to something we have, just like people were talking about, senses, many different senses. We have within our apparatus something that is even more potent than consciousness, and that's pure awareness or pure being.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I've exhausted you. Okay.
I'll take some of what you're having.
I would discuss that with you, but it would take a long time, and some people would hate me even more than they do at the moment. So I shall not say anything about that. Okay. But thank you very much. I've got my skeptical face on. Right. But thank you very much, Ron.
You're welcome.
Terry, you're back on stage.
First, I hate to be nitpicky, but I will make a comment about David Bohm and Einstein. Einstein was not a supporter of Bohm. No, Einstein absolutely was a supporter of the deterministic universe, the idea that there was not this tossing of dice. That's true. But when he looked at Bohm's theory, his comment was literally, looks like the same stuff de Broglie tried, and was actually quite rather dismissive of it. Einstein, he referred to it as a cheap solution. I think.
Modern scientists have, put Bohm's things through the computers, and his theory of, let me think of what the phrase is. hidden variables, which would, if the hidden variables idea of Bohm is proved, then it takes the indeterminacy out of it. In other words, if we can discover the hidden variables, then things are determined, and then he can reconcile much more easily, and Einstein will once again take him under his welcoming arms.
Well, but the trouble is that Einstein referred to that very point about hidden variables as that was the cheap solution he was talking to.
Well, but now they're proving that there's a lot of proof that these hidden variables at least are a reasonable hypothesis to be further pursued.
Yeah, they're a hypothesis, but they've been pursued and experimentally is proven. You can buy equipment on the internet right now. Literally, I could go out and buy some equipment that says that you do have entanglement. The entanglement matches the Bell's inequality. And when you have the Bell's inequality, you actually have experimental proof that is there. Bell wanted to prove Einstein right. Bell was very disappointed at his own results. When the aspect results started coming out, he was honest about it, but he didn't like that. He had hoped that it would prove hidden variables to be that. You cannot create that mathematical relationship with the data you get from Bell's inequality. You have to put it something much more complicated.
Okay, my final word on this is I am already in over my head too deep, and so I bow out. I bow out because this is not an area I could argue intelligently with you about.
Don't worry, you bring up good points. So don't get me wrong, it's because there's a huge amount of interest in that. Bohm's theories are very strong right now, actually. But at the same time, there's this paradoxical situation that you got this ferocious, and it is ferocious set of data saying, I can't do this with hidden variables. So then you get into superdeterminism and a number of things. You got to do something on superdeterminism, Ron. That would be an interesting one. That's a big thing right now too. So and I'm kind of losing track of where I was going with that. Adam Schuster, again, just to mention, I just looked up Hoffman, and I don't know if I've ever met him. I know people. I know people who know him from Irvine. It's an interesting set of stuff. And just at a quick read, because I'm not familiar with his theory, I would agree with strongly with one point. He calls it fitness. I would call it perseverance, survival, persistence. Persistence is the word I usually use. That biology designs us for persistence, the ability to survive, which I think is the same thing he means by fitness. I would go even farther. I would say the whole concept of space-time has incredibly strong biological tendencies built into it that are a product of an extremely local environment that we live in. Because we live in about 0.00001% of the universe. Most of it doesn't follow the nice little object-oriented structures that we get in this very particular surface environment, this very small world at a very precise temperature range.
Isn't that where the idea of non-locality comes in?
Non-locality is absolutely an aspect of it because the underlying Poincare symmetries of what seems to be going on, they ain't what we call space-time. And this is just something that's there. Einstein was big on this, but underlying reality does not work the way that we like to perceive it. We have an approximation that we call space-time XYZT. And it's not hard to show that that approximation falls into pieces in terms of predictability if you go into a whole range of other environments. So I would even say that just our general assumption that XYZT in space is an adequate representation of the universe really fights against the math. And I also know from biology that from very specific biology, neurobiology, we have space built into our heads. So it's very hard for us not to see it that way. How are you going to see it that way when you got all these cells, these grid cells that are setting it? And by the way, somebody just told me this last weekend, it's a Clifford torus or a flat torus. I didn't realize that. So there's a geometrical relationship built into our brains at the literal neural architecture level. Of course we're biased. Of course we have a certain way of looking at things. And it turns out that no matter how we try, we keep trying to fit it back into that thing that we're most comfortable with. And it's not easy to do that. So, so to be or not to be or not to be, if even our questions of underlying framework by which we describe things is problematic or very localized or very limited, it brings up some interesting questions. But I will read up more on. I'd say it's possible I've even met him. I don't know, because we do work in some of the same circles. But if it was a very peripheral contact, because I work more with the engineering science side on that. But he is a cognitive scientist, so that's an interesting connection. And I was just going to, Ron Green, if you haven't done infinity lately, that might be a good topic again. Infinities pop up, and they pop up in some interesting ways right now in physics. So it's you did one on that, didn't you?
No, I kept away from that so far.
Probably a wise decision. So,
Don't give me any ideas.
We can't hit you with any mud pies on this Zoom meetup, you know.
What? I'm sorry, what?
I just said we can't hit him with any mud pies on this Zoom meetup. So, and besides, he doesn't seem to care. I'm sure he'll just come with a washcloth anyway.
Oh, well, it'll to that. So that's an interesting set of issues. And thanks for the reference on that, Adam. I will look that up, because I'm curious to see. I saw some resonances in some points I don't know. I'm almost sure I've read some of his works. I probably have some of his papers in my library. I just don't know it. So I'll take a look.
Thank you very much, Terry. And it's James again.
So happy to be here. I just wanted to put in a good word for infinity. This idea that infinity is really bad idea because we can't wrap our we can't wrap our finite minds around it. It's like that. That's what they told me in elementary school. But as soon as I had to start thinking about it, I had to admit there are infinities. I posted a paper on mathematical, mostly scientific and mathematical infinities, but just this word reality is a good example. I've heard it at least 10 times in this meetup. People throw around the word reality that they're talking about an infinity when they say reality, either one that they made up themselves or one that is kind of like describes an empirical totality. When we say the word totality, we're talking about an infinity. When we say, of course, when we say the sum, the all real numbers, of course, that's an infinity. And all the points on a circle, that's an infinity. It's not. I think mythologies in terms of both in science and philosophy are kind of a bad thing. That the mind, because it is finite, can't think of infinities or understand what infinities are. So anyway, that's all. I just wanted to put in a good word for infinity. Love it.
Well done. Thank you, James. Adam.
I just wanted to mention, Donald Hoffman, he has come a long way in just like recently, like I can't get into like the whole specifics of it, and I haven't been able to digest the mathematics behind it, but my understanding is that he has been able to model experiences at a very low level. He can sort of, with his theory of conscious agents, he's been able to replicate some base experiences. So he is actually getting tractable results out of his work. So mathematically and sort of virtually, but in a compelling way. And he's a pretty modest guy. He's the first to go around saying like, I might be wrong. I probably am wrong. But so that makes me really put what he says more on an even judging stone. Also the David Bohm. Yeah, my understanding, I could be wrong, but David Bohm, I thought was really conjecturing more on the way that things that would explain sort of interference and the sort of the interference of waves and sort of the weirder effects of quantum mechanics in a more classical way, with this idea of a leading I forgot some sort of like leading edge. My understanding is that he wasn't really speaking one way or the other on non-locality. He was just trying to give an alternative view of what the underlying reality could be that doesn't require the current view held by quantum mechanics. And Bell, what actually he proved is that he did prove a point that non-locality is true, but he also proved that David Bohm's theories in matter of fact are just equally as predictive and in every way as quantum mechanics. Like they're for all purposes, if you can't actually tell the difference underneath, they work operationally the same at our level. My problem with his theory is that somebody said like Einstein said it was like the poor man's theory or something. I don't know about that, but like it is a very classical way. I mean, he's talking about like a bouncing ball, like leading in front of a thing. Like it's a very classical way of trying to break down a quantum problem. So seems a little weird to me, but just I think it's interesting that somebody that it's possible to put out some other theory that makes actual sense. And I just posted a thing in to a lecture by Tim Maudlin. Check that out. There's actually a lot about the Bell equality theorems and the EPR paradox that sort of has been misunderstood over time and gets perpetuated on the internet through different YouTube channels. Like check out it's a long lecture, but it really gets into what EPR talked about and what Bell and what Bell was proving and wasn't proving. So I could be wrong, but that was my understanding of that material. Last point, infinity. Man, I don't even know. Infinity is weird. I'm doing an event on infinity next month actually, and I mean, infinity has to work at some level because calculus works. Calculus drives everything that we do, and we're dealing with the opposite of infinity. We're dealing with infinitesimal, tiny, the most tiny of tiny sizes you can get. But there has to be. It wouldn't have the predictive power and accuracy that it has without being in some way reflective of whatever underlying reality is there. So I tend to fall on the side of saying that infinities do exist and that we just can't wrap our mind around it. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Adam. Debbie.
Yeah, thank you. I've been thinking, well, with the discussion about reality and existence within the metaphysical and scientific context, and I thought of perhaps extracting the discussion about existence being from the metaphysical domain and putting it into the language field of perhaps when we do talk about realms and existence and beings, we could perhaps talk about world of discourse, domains of discourse, a realm that has a realm that is bounded by different kinds of discourse, of like the distinction between fiction and non-fiction. I mean, let's say in the world of so we could perhaps distinguish with language, with different worlds of context, different world of references, and we could perhaps make a difference between different kinds of existence, like making a difference between unicorns and Harry Potters and dragons, and yet talk, and of course also concepts like democracy and justice and perhaps maybe numbers in the same domain, I'm not sure. And with that saying, if unicorns are real, well, in this context, in this realm of discourse, they do exist. And when we talk, if I'm talking about the Harry Potter film and I'm sorry, books or the characters, and I'm talking about the whole world, I could say that exists in a fictional way. So I do perhaps make a difference between or what we should perhaps, or we could, my inclination is, the question is perhaps instead of asking what exists and what doesn't, what's reality and what isn't, which does relate more to the phenomena, to metaphysics and to science, perhaps the question is, what is the framework? How can we perhaps give more, how can we define a world of discourse as opposed to different other discourses, and perhaps knowing when something exists or not within this discourse. But for example, different rules. If there's a rule of you're not allowed to run with a ball while playing soccer or basketball, in the realm or in the context of discourse of basketball, this is not allowed. But in football, American football, this is allowed. So does this rule exist or not? It depends on the boundaries, the framework of our discourse. So that would definitely take out the discussion into what world are we talking about? What are the shared assumptions, our shared conceptions within this world of discourse that we are engaged in? And I think that is perhaps also politically or socially important. Ron, you said, yeah, we're here and we're all talking together, and that is something that is so important in a basic human connection. So this would also be, always be constructive to define the world of discourse we are engaged in. So if we're talking about perhaps in more social or political situations or context of reference, it's there, I would want to distinguish between different kinds of realities. I would want to think that we can somehow distinguish. When I want to say objectively, but I don't mean that, that there is some distinction between my belief, or my world, my reality, and conspirational thinking. Okay, conspiracies, theories. I would want to find some sort of distinction, some sort of assumption, some sort of boundary limit that can decide what is a valid theory, what is a theory that describes best reality, whatever a shared reality, and what doesn't, what is harmful, what's a lie. So that is why I extracted the discussion about existence and reality and try to put it in the context of, in a social context, which is always, of course, language and yeah, and definitions and reference and context, of course. So that's my contribution to reality.
Thank you very much, Debbie. You brought in something very interesting, the context, which puts a different light onto what we think about existence. So that's very interesting. Thank you very much.
I think, sorry, that also continues the line of thought of William. I think that resonates a bit with what William said before. I think William mentioned context before.
True. Thank you very much. Trevor, at last.
I wanted to talk a bit more about what Ron was talking about David Bohm's theories, and also how that kind of, I think, ties in with artificial intelligence. My understanding of at least one component of Bohm's theory of implicate and explicate order is I see explicate order as essentially how reality eventually physically manifests. So explicate order is what happens, whereas implicate order is where does what eventually happens, where does it come from? What is the causality that precedes it? And it seems pretty obvious to me that based on our understanding of artificial intelligence, as well as, you know, how do neural networks, silicon-based neural networks work, combined with our understanding of the human mind, it seems to be that the human mind is essentially a kind of neural network that behaves very much like the ones we see in the lab. So the human mind both perceives reality as well as generates reality from the perspective of the process of the mind that perceives so-called reality via the model that it has constructed that represents reality. And for basically cultural reasons, we speak of these two things as being synonymous. Like when people refer to reality, what they're actually referring to is their model. But culturally, we don't make a distinction between the two, so we conflate them and thus become confused. But if you look at it, I mean, what the world is composed of is a bunch of little biological neural networks contained within skulls that are making predictions about reality. The outcome of those predictions is what drives human behavior, which causes events to occur to which the neural network has a response. It further, that training data feeds into the neural network, changing the manner in which it will process and generate reality in the future, which causes more explicate order, which has reactions, which feeds back into the system. And it's just this loop over and over and over, which is problematic in itself. But culturally, we don't acknowledge this. Not only do we not acknowledge this process, we say something other than this is happening. We have kind of a scientific understanding of it, but that is not the understanding that gets pushed out into kind of the public discourse. And as a consequence, people have a very simplistic understanding of what is going on, and thus continue to make the same bad decisions, beliefs, reactions to explicit order. So the end result is we're stuck in this kind of local maxima that we can't get ourselves out of because we do not utilize the skills and knowledge that we have access to because of the nature of the process, I would say, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like people can have for example, a good example of this is if you take philosophers or scientists and you sit them down and you push very complicated questions, you present very complicated questions to them, and then if you carefully observe what they say in response, their responses will be full of errors that contradict knowledge that they in fact possess. But during real-time cognition, the human mind is not able to handle this amount of complexity, and it starts making errors because culturally we have imposed the dimension of time on someone. They must answer in a timely fashion. Therefore, they make mistakes. And then when one of those is pointed out, it kicks off post hoc rationalization, ego maintenance. People don't like to be incorrect in public discussions, so on and so forth. Right, so it shows you that even the very best minds are not able to function without making errors, at least independently they cannot.
Thank you very much. There are a number of very interesting points. The last one was making errors. And Roland will say that there's no such thing as an error. And
but Roland wouldn't be able to, I predict Roland wouldn't be able to maintain a 5-hour defense of that proposition.
I think he would, and he has.
I'd like to see it in, like, everyone makes these claims, but it comes down to, is the claim true or not? Here is where we're starting to conflate perceived reality and actual reality, right?
I have spent so many hours with Roland, and he definitely makes the case for it. Whether I agree with it or not, I'm so tired afterwards, I don't even know anymore if I agree or not. But trust me, he makes a good case in 5 hours. But
that could be a good topic for a future debate. Then.
Oh, thank you for bringing up more ideas. Now there is a problem with error. You went into psychology there, Trevor. Why people make errors and whether they're errors at all, and etc. etc. But the point is that you brought in reality again, and once you bring in reality, you're moving away from, I think you're moving away from what we're supposed to be talking about, existence. Does reality exist? Now that's a difficult question. Does reality exist? Is there such a thing as reality? Is there reality? And is reality existence? And do things have to exist that are real? And do real things exist? And that's quite a question. Not at this time of the day after nearly 3 hours, but these are questions that need to be addressed within the framework of existence, because that's what we're talking about. Reality, does it exist?
But that's my point, that reality is manufactured by the mind. People think that the mind only perceives reality, but they don't realize that the mind manufactures reality, or at least that which we refer to as reality is manufactured by the mind. And in fact, if you think about it metaphysically, like metaphysical reality is in fact manufactured by the mind. That is the origin of the majority of, well, all of metaphysical reality, perhaps. It originates in the mind.
Wow.
Its only existence, like rights, for example, do not have an existence in physical reality. They exist only in the mind.
Wave particle?
Wave particle, that appears to be purely physical, but opinions vary. But regardless, our
Yeah, but
interface.
isn't it totally dependent on the observation of it, the conscious observation of it, or whether it's a wave or a particle?
It is not known, but the human mind cannot know. The human mind very often is not able to not know things.
Wheeler went to consciousness, but he is not necessarily the only opinion of that. I am in fact a leading, I'm like the advocate of an extreme opposite view that anything's momentum is an observation, because it tells the two objects where they are. So there's a range of thoughts on that.
Right, but then there's presumably also an underlying truth of the matter.
Oh yeah, oh yes.
But
yes.
but the human mind often can't even try to look at that because it gets too focused on its belief. Right, like people can. It's easy for people to wonder what is true about, say, the sum of some numbers. But it is very difficult for the human mind to wonder what is true about abortion, for example. They can't. Getting the mind to wonder what is true is a lot more difficult than it seems.
And since my hand's up, I guess I can go ahead and talk some of that, but you're
Yes,
making.
your hand's up, yes.
Okay. By the way, neural nets, I was a little amused on one part. Neural nets as a model of how brains work. Of course, neural nets were derived from early models in the 50s of how people thought the brains worked. And they were actually very poor. They weren't very good. To this day, I am annoyed and try to convince people that you really ought to be using complex numbers in your models instead of real numbers, because that's more what the neurons actually do, which we now know and we didn't know back then. So there's some ironies about the neural nets that we have now are based on a pretty limited knowledge, but incredibly powerful. Ron LeCun and some of the others who worked on that have really took what was a little research topic and turned it into a world-changing event. And with that said, neural nets are not intelligence. They're actually perception devices. The original name for them was perceptrons. It's still appropriate. You can do incredibly powerful things with perception-based reasoning, but it ain't general intelligence. And that is being realized and doubled down on now, that new models are needed, or some of the old models resurrected or something. It doesn't quite do it. Why, it doesn't even come close to it. It's automated perception. You know, the internet suddenly was able to see cats. Okay, before it couldn't see cats. So when the internet sees cats, everybody starts really getting a lot more pictures of cats. That really is what neural nets are mostly about. And you can configure them in complex ways, in all sorts of bizarre ways. It's something that mimics human intelligence, but it's not. It's not. We don't understand it. The modeling issue, Trevor, that you mentioned, the way I always put it this way: if you were designing a machine, would you just casually put in an ability to do an incredibly realistic simulation every night that you call dreaming, in which you can do almost anything and imagine it just as incredibly realistic in terms of how it seems during the day? Would you just casually put that in there for no particular reason? The argument is that in order to do sensory reduction of the incredible amount of data we get every microsecond, every millisecond from a sensor, we have to have a model that actually instantly filters that out. And I actually seen some very interesting research ventures recently. But the idea is that somehow we have to defend ourselves against all of that huge, massive things. You talk about making mistakes. We're lucky if we can just get something that's kind of works. And maybe a lot of what the idea of what's intelligent, what is the struggle to get a little better at it, because it's not easy. And we have absolutely mechanisms in our brains, entire band. We have whole fiber networks in there.
But that's my point. Is people cannot
carrying data around to create models to deal with reality.
But this is kind of my point, is that the mind makes
I'm
all
agreeing.
of these errors.
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
The phenomenon that I'm trying to draw attention to is the mind is not able to wonder what is true. Like I presented
it's not possible. I mean, the very fact we're discussing it says something, but it's hard. I would agree, it's very hard.
No, but I presented an approximate analogy of the mind behaving similar to a neural network. You perceive that as a claim of identicalness.
Oh, no. Again, that was just a point of amusement that the neural nets are an analogy and a poor one.
The mind is a prediction machine, and the predictions are perceived by the mind as reality itself.
Yes.
And we do not know this. Well, we have
don't
abstract knowledge of this, but the knowledge of this is not available during real-time cognition.
And I'll even throw something in on the infinities issue, because this always amuses me. Every equation you've ever seen that talks about infinities, it goes something like that. In every single case, when you actually use the equation, as opposed to calling it an abstraction, which is kind of a cop-out word, a philosophical cop-out, it's an abstraction, as if somehow that solves everything. All the techniques we have for manipulating equations, all the ways we convert equations, we find amazing things that Einstein find E equals mc squared. All these conversions can be reframed in terms entirely of program transformations, in which you say, these are really rules by which I convert one program to another one, and I know that it will still work. Now, what that says about infinity is that you cannot do an actual instance in which you reach the infinity But there is something in the structure of the universe that makes that goal very, very real in the sense that we can always approximate in that direction. Now, you could get into a whole philosophical discussion about, well, does that make it real or not make it the limits real? Because the fact that the universe is somehow letting us do that absolutely is real, or it wouldn't be working. But then we get a confusion. Some of the biggest faux pas in science have been when let's just accept that the infinity is real. And I know some of you like infinity, but I'm just saying there's warning signs in this. Aristotle would not do that. The Greeks were very, very cautious about this. They saw the danger. I mean, we kind of just threw it out the window and said, oh, we don't care. We'll just go ahead and do it. And there's some penalties for that. One of them is the vacuum density problem. That the best theory in physics currently predicts that we should have exploded exactly about a trillion of a second ago. Oops, we didn't. Well, we should have exploded again. Oops, we didn't. And this is the best theory. This is quantum field theory. Best theory in physics predicts all these things really well and says we should be exploding continuously at every instant. So we're not getting something right, but it's related directly to the infinity issue because the math which does that also accepts infinites and infinitesimals as a given, as opposed to as a program. And Ron, I am sorry we've gotten so kind of down the science. Sorry, I didn't make it so sciencey and mathy in some of this, but it's just interesting set of issues. But it's also philosophical. I mean, these are existence issues. It's just that this is a topic that hits on some very technical issues in some very interesting ways.
You can't separate science from philosophy. You know, they used to be under the same umbrella. It was just called natural philosophy. We need to bring it back under the same umbrella.
It's still a PhD, a doctorate.
A PhD. What is that's just some concoction of the modern world.
I haven't got my hand up, but can I say something before you, Adam?
I like Ron. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to try to bring this down to earth a tiny little bit because I am Trevor. There's a problem with us using our minds to explain our minds. There's a bit of Gödel in here, and I don't see how you're going to get through that. Where is he? Oh, there you are. Trevor, you keep on moving around. Trevor, you're saying there are things that you know exist, but we can't say that they exist because we don't understand it. Now, that is hugely problematic.
The mind gets confused during real-time cognition. So if you network minds, if you put them in a situation like this and have other minds monitor the mind that is speaking, other minds can very easily see errors that a mind that is engaging in cognition and communication simultaneously mistakes. Why? Because they have different neural networks have different abilities than others. So it's like collective cognition. The shortcomings of one node can be overcome by nodes that do not have that shortcoming.
So the mind that looks at another mind that says that other mind is making error, the one that's looking at it is correct in noticing the other.
No. It is correct or incorrect. It has a perception that the other mind is incorrect, and then other minds can comment on that. And then very often there is an objective means of determining if one is incorrect.
So somewhere
there isn't necessarily, but multiple minds monitoring a single mind it's good redundancy.
Was that a leap of faith that ultimately there's an objective so-and-so? Wasn't that a bit of a leap of faith?
Yes.
Well, no, if something is objective, I mean, it's tautologically true. Any given proposition is objective or it is not. That is base level reality. And then there's the layer we live on. We have an opinion about that. Very often people will state their opinion as if it is a fact. I'm not doing that. I'm saying that objectivity exists or it does not in base level reality for any given proposition. But evolved consciousness conflates reality and perception of it for good reason. And it is unable to realize when it's doing that, because the very same mechanism that produced the error is the mechanism that is used to error check it.
When you
So
have
if you get other neural networks to perform error checking on the initial one, you have a greater likelihood of catching errors.
So it's statistics, right? The more minds you
It's
get
more like
together,
it's
the
more like
closer you're going to get.
epistemology.
No, it
Yeah,
isn't.
well,
Well, it's
it
statistics.
utilizes epistemology logic.
No, but you're saying that the more minds you get together, the closer you're going to get to objectivity. You get a million minds together, you're going to get somewhere. 10 million minds.
Statistical epistemology.
You'll get somewhere. Yeah, you will. It seems plausible that you will get closer to the truth if you apply more minds to a problem.
So we've got to get lots more people onto this Zoom, right? And the more people we get on, the closer we're going to get to the truth.
Well, that's a function of the capabilities of this venue as a means for, like, there's
Certainly
many
more likely to
shortcomings
get
in this venue that are not visible to the mind because superior alternatives do not yet exist. Therefore, the mind perceives it as non-existent. Like, the mind cannot see potentiality, I guess is the point.
Can I just add something very briefly, because I love David Bohm and I don't want to go into science, but he also wrote another book. It's a very short book. It is called On Dialogue.
Yes.
David Bohm. And this is what we're doing today. We're dialoguing. And he spent decades dialoguing with very influential people. And it's all kind of summarized in this brief little book, but it just gives you an idea of the range of his thinking, and he saw how many of the problems that we have in the world today are because people are not communicating with each other. And he highlighted a lot of the difficulties that arise when people dialogue as opposed to like discussions and so forth. Anyway, I just put this in as a plug for one of my heroes.
Thank you very much. Hang on, we got Adam, sorry, you're waiting. Off you go.
I just wanted to pose one question to the group, and that was based on something Terry said about complex numbers. So this is something I've always wondered, like, if we could just put the idea, let's just take for granted for just a moment that like three things of something is real, that it does exist. We could get into that whole dynamic, but it's a lot harder to say that negative three things exist. I mean, we've sort of adapted that into our mentality. I mean, the concept of zero didn't used to exist. The concept of negative numbers didn't used to exist. Now they're an everyday thing that we've made sense of, but there is something in our world that seems to exist and that shouldn't exist, and that's complex numbers. What number? I is the number that is the square root of -1. In math, you cannot have a square root of -1. So mathematicians invented a square root of -1. They called it I, and suddenly it unlocked and solved a bunch of equations that have been plaguing them for centuries. And now it's used in everything from electromagnetism to string theory. So there's something to it. And it may just be another reflection of our inability to understand it, like infinity. So I would just pose it to the group. Do you think that numbers, like imaginary, they're called imaginary numbers, but which is like, everybody says like that is the worst name for them because they're not really imaginary. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Can't hear you.
Can't hear Terry. Or if you guys really want your minds blown about infinity.
You need to unmute, Terry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, complex numbers. And by the way, the history, as you said, it actually took literally hundreds of years to come up with the perception of imaginary numbers. It took hundreds of years to come up with the idea of zero.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same was true for negative numbers. So these are we talk about mathematics as if it's some cut and dried scientific issue. No, it's pushing the brain to do things that philosophically are abhorrent. I mean, negative numbers are counterfactuals. They're saying I can have an apple, so I cannot have an apple. That's a pretty remarkable statement, and it requires a lot of abstraction of reality that we don't know what it. And yet at the same time, the universe, as you said, quantum mechanics exploded with complex numbers. That was the perfect, almost perfect. It's not quite perfect, but the almost perfect medium for expressing the extremely rotational aspects of what's going on. I would actually argue that it's a little counterintuitive because the complex rotations are perfect. They don't have an imaginary real axis. They just have one smooth continuum and then phase relationships between them. And that's not quite the same thing. So math can actually produce artifacts that aren't quite there, because you will never find, and I've had this discussion with mathematicians, just point out, you can't find an imaginary axis. We cover it by calling it symmetry, but the truth is it's just not. Symmetry is often a way of saying it's not really there. It's an imaginary thing we put onto it, and we do that on so much of reality. We put an artificial construct on top of it that's not really there. And this is, again, to me, math can be a deeply philosophical issue for exactly that kind of reason. We talk about counting apples. What's an apple? Is a pear an apple? Is this red apple an apple? Is the yellow apple an apple? You so quickly, we talk about so casually about these abstractions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And every time when you try to apply them to the real world, it gets messy. So what is the universe giving us? It's giving us something, but sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that we really understand it well.
Yeah, 30 seconds, really quick. We think we understand. Today there's the question of the hard question of consciousness, and then there's a joke going around now. Forget about the hard question of consciousness. What about the hard question of matter? We don't even know what matter is. So the latest theories are there's all this dark matter, et cetera, et cetera. It's just the latest, right? The latest ideas in the mind. It just goes to show how, as much as the more we know how much we don't know, right? It's just a perfect example of a magnificent instrument which clearly has limitations. Anyway, that's my 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adam. Michael. Hi.
Yeah, a quick comment about neural networks, artificial neural networks, and artificial intelligence. So I think that we have to differentiate when we are asking whether they are real, whether they are really sentient, really intelligent. We have to differentiate between what they are for themselves and what they are for us. And what they are for themselves, we have no way to know. I have no way to know what you are for, or anyone, or a dog, or a flower, or whatever. But we can just guess that maybe if they function like our neural networks, maybe they could experience some kind of processes resembling to what happens, what we experience when we are processing this in the same way. But this is just a guess. But what they are for us, that's a different question, because it depends on their relationship to humans, their place in our human activities. And if we only use them as our servants, that's who they are. But if they win the place similar to ours, if they take responsibility for important decisions, if we form some kind of emotional connections to them, which happens surprisingly easily, then probably they become intelligent for us, maybe even super intelligent. but that's just two different questions. So that I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Are we, is your hand up, Trevor?
Yeah, I just wanted to grind my axe a bit more. Ron held up a book on David Bohm's book on dialogue, which I haven't read, but there's a number of books out there that you know, there's a long history of the study of human communication, and a lot is known about it, of the obvious and serious shortcomings in it. If humanity was to develop a sophisticated platform for high quality communication, it would incorporate features that are designed to directly address these various well-known shortcomings. But humanity seems to have not noticed this potentiality that exists within reality, and thus they have not developed such a platform. Or maybe they think it's better to, instead of investing our resources into that, we're better off investing them into better technology for developing bombs to drop on other humans' heads. And until we can get out of this loop, I propose that we're stuck at permanently stuck at a local maxima that we're never going to get out of unless we are able to overcome the mind. And this is not a new idea. This is not my idea. I mean, I have maybe a different spin on it, but this idea that the mind is the problem has been around for thousands of years, and it's obviously true. But the mind is not. But the mind is not able to see.
Why is it? What do you mean? It's obviously true.
Well, name a problem on the planet, and the origin of the problem can be traced back to humans.
Exactly, we're humans.
Right, and humans run on the mind. Therefore, the mind is the source of all problems. But we cannot take that idea seriously.
That's not a therefore, by the way. That doesn't necessarily follow. No,
Why?
Because from the beginning of time, for example, people have been dropping bombs or killing themselves with swords and God knows what, and God knows what. So it's been going on since man began and woman began. So you're saying that everything that's happened unto then we can now change because we're cleverer, our minds are better, we can think better.
No, I'm saying we think terribly. I'm saying that the cause of problems is the mind.
We don't have it. We don't have anything else. What do we have?
Oh, we have better operating minds. The potential is there, but we choose to not pursue that potential. So I'm scolding humanity.
I don't choose not to pursue anything.
Really? Yeah. Are you talking about reality as it is, or are you talking about your perception?
I don't know what reality. No, I don't know what reality as it is. That's the point. That's what I keep on making for months. I don't know what reality is. Nobody does. Nobody does. What is reality? How can we possibly get to reality? How? What is reality? Where?
Well, we could discuss it.
Yes, we can, and we are, which is good. Well,
right, but that's how we achieve things. But one thing we do not discuss is the problems caused by the human mind. All problems descend from the human mind, and that is one topic that humanity will not discuss.
We're discussing it now.
But you're saying it's false.
No, what I'm saying is that the mind is all we've got. There is nothing else. You want to invent something that's beyond
the mind can run in different modes, though. It can run in dumb mode, it can run in smarter mode, and it can run in very smart mode. But we choose to insist for the middle of the road setting. We do not, on certain things, we will not pursue higher levels. There's something that blocks us. Right?
No,
On
that's
science and
that's a
materialism,
supposition.
humans will pursue, they will apply the full power of their mind to materialistic matters, but to metaphysical matters, they will not. In fact, they will use their mind to oppose the pursuit of perfection.
I've been, most of my life has been pursued in doing exactly what you say we should do, going against.
Have you executed with perfection?
I have not. I've done nothing with perfection ever.
Okay.
Ever.
If you happen to have, as a ridiculous scenario, 50 people following you around, observing your cognition at all times and pointing out flaws, would that plausibly, at least to some degree, improve your capabilities?
I don't actually understand. I don't actually understand the question, because I would have to think that they are right and everything I've done up to now is wrong, which is possible. But 50 people is not enough. You've got to bring 1 million, 10 million, 50 million.
But no claim of everything you've
statistics.
done. But no claim of everything you've done has been made. I only said, is it plausible that having 5 people very closely monitoring every single thing you said, that perhaps even once in your history would they detect an error, bring it to your attention, and then you could correct it?
I have never said I don't make errors. Never.
Right. And I've made no claim that you've said that. I'm asking you, if you had someone monitoring you, 5 people, very bright people who are trained for this, at least once in the past, is it plausible that they would have caught you making an error?
Who trained these people? I don't understand. I don't understand.
It's a thought experiment. Presume they're the very best on the planet.
The best people on the planet.
Yeah, at this particular job. If they were to monitor your statements, is it plausible that in your entire history that at least once someone would have noticed an error?
Of course. Okay. Naturally.
Right. So this is my point. If you get minds monitoring other minds, this can produce better results, plausibly.
That's pure statistics.
No, it's speculation.
Okay,
it's not purely statistics, it's neuroscience, it's epistemology, it's logic, it's a whole bunch of things.
It's not actually logic, but I mean
actually
it's fair. It's fair. Okay. Fair enough. I accept what you say.
Wasn't this a good demonstration of my point?
I accept everything you just said.
I don't think you do.
You're right.
Anyway. I mean, Trevor, I think that you're not necessarily saying that it's likely the more people. This is a weird point that we're even pursuing right now, but like the point you're making that like bringing more people into the situation wouldn't necessarily weigh in. You wouldn't necessarily get a more clear picture of reality, but maybe the picture of reality that you started with could be verified more, or could be like relied upon more, because you'd have more people testing. I mean, one could plausibly see a scenario where, having more people come in with their own weird, like weird theories, like it kind of like jumbles everything up. But I think statistically over time, and the world runs on statistics, everything is statistics. So statistics do matter. But I think that's what maybe you're trying to say, is that the more people you have looking at a problem, the less likely it is that you're going to be missing something, or that you can sort of knock on that piece of wood and expect it to be there.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of a bit further down the road of where I would eventually be going with this. But even getting people to stop, even getting humans to participate in a venue where you are obligated to speak in the form of true statements, and it is genuinely considered unacceptable to speak in untrue statements, this would be very, very useful, I propose.
You know how many dictatorships have collected millions of people and told them to speak the truth because this is the truth? I mean, really? I mean,
see, now
cases
in
now
such a venue, you might point out that Ron is falling victim to the mind's tendency to imagine worst case scenarios and project that as being necessarily true onto the future, when actually he doesn't see the future. What he sees is a mirage of the future. despite having abstract knowledge of that fact that this
I
is how the mind works,
acknowledge,
but you don't have access to it during real-time cognition.
I repeat what I said. There have been cases where millions of people are telling the truth because they've been told that that's the truth. Millions of them, and not very long ago. In the States, they got half the population who's saying that they have the truth because now we're all going to stand and tell the truth, right? I'm not from the States, but I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me. Numbers have got nothing to do with it, and who says it's the truth? The one person there says, you're all going to speak the truth because I have the truth. Millions
That's
of
a
them.
top down. That's one. You're saying that's like a small few telling the large many what it is, and that's not what he's saying. He's saying that you start with one. Like, just imagine like a door. You're blind. You have a blindfold on. You got to walk up to this door and like see if there's a door there. If one person does it, maybe there's a door there. Maybe they hit a wall. Maybe they hit somebody's forehead who was standing in the door. Who knows? You have 100 people go up to that thing and tap it, and they get the exact same feel and the exact same sound and the exact same time and place. Then you probably have a door there. That's all he's saying.
I agree. But having a door and knowing the truth are a hell of a difference. Because the truth
But you know there's a door there.
Nobody, yes, true. I know there's a door, but I do not know the truth. And to say that get a lot of people together and not use their minds, and lots of people do not use their minds, will definitely not get to the truth. Because you
I'm not making a claim that this guarantees
Trevor,
to yield the truth. I'm saying, can you get a human being to stop making errors?
No.
I think you can.
No, I know you think you can, but it doesn't mean you can. The fact that that's the point. You think you can.
Is it your opinion that it is not possible, or is it a fact that it is not possible?
I don't believe in facts.
So it's your opinion. So the meaning of is, what is the meaning of is in this context?
The meaning of is that's what we've been talking about all the time.
But in reality, the meaning of is means it is my opinion that it is.
No, when you say in reality, that's where I stop. Because you're telling me what reality is. And I don't have to accept what you say is reality. Is it your opinion? Is it your opinion that is reality? Or that something is reality?
It would detect more errors and correct them, and this can be demonstrated.
Is that your opinion?
No, no, it's more than an opinion. It's a fact because it can be demonstrated. It can be demonstrated. We run our school systems on this principle.
No, when somebody tells me that they know for fact, it's a problem. Trevor, you can see that, surely.
It depends on the fact. It depends on the fact.
Ron, you've been declaring from on high what's right and what's wrong all night. You've been speaking more factually yes or no than anybody here.
But that's just his opinion.
Can we not just like consider his point?
Of course we can.
Nobody here can. The stuff that we're talking about is if anybody says that they're sure about like definitively one way or another on something, like, you know, then they're probably wrong. Like, none of us know the answers to these things. You can't just say that.
Exactly. That's the whole point I'm making, that nobody knows and nobody can know. And you all want to say that with our minds we can decide something beyond our minds. And that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. It's not wrong.
You're straw manning. I mean, you're straw manning now. I don't think that's what he's saying.
It's not wrong. I'm wrong all the time. Everybody's wrong all the time. Even Trevor's wrong sometimes. Are you not, Trevor?
But I think you're wrong in this case.
You can't. I'm not wrong here. If I'm wrong, you'd be able to demonstrate it, but you were not even able to try to demonstrate it. This is the phenomenon I'm talking about, is the mind. It gives up. It can't even try.
Okay. So your mind does not give up.
No, I do not.
Okay.
This is why people find me so annoying.
Okay. No. I find you very interesting, as you know. I mean, you know that because we've had conversations. That's not the point. I find you interesting, and Adam's got nothing to do with right and wrong. I am wrong all the time. I have no idea whether I'm right or not. If I thought I was right, I wouldn't have the philosophy that I have. which is based on things not knowing what's right and wrong, and certainly not knowing what reality is. Certainly not knowing reality is. I don't think there is reality. There cannot be reality. There just cannot be. If there's reality, at some point we would get to, we can't get to reality. We can't. That's it.
There's not reality as it's described. That's true, but there's something. There's something there.
Well, wait, no, there is actually philosophy, Ron. There is solipsism. Is that what you are? Is that what you're saying? Solipsism?
Well,
solipsism is the view that.
No, I know what solipsism is, but that's not my. I'm not a solipsist because I think
we can't get to reality comprehensively, but we can get to portions of it. It seems.
It's like that's like saying there's a bit of truth, or he's saying a bit of truth. No, it's all the truth.
It's like that.
Nothing
but
the truth.
It is
no.
also simultaneously unlike that.
No, there's the truth and the whole truth. If there's a bit of the truth, it's not the truth. And if there's a bit of reality, it's not reality.
Particles literally tells us that binary natures do not exist in reality. Like binary natures are our construction, period.
Okay.
Everything is statistical. Everything is probability. Everything is fluid.
Okay, good. That's exactly what I'm saying, by the way. I agree with you. I agree with you. Trevor doesn't, but I agree with you. It happens, and it has happened, which is very nice. We agree. Trevor doesn't. That's fine. It's no problem. That's why we're here. We're here to discuss things. Some of us say they're right. Some of us say they're wrong. Some of us say maybe. It's fine. And at the end of the day, we're going to come away, and we'll either come away with the ideas that we've always had, or we'll think about what somebody said. And I always think about what people have said. And I watch the tape again, and I'm very impressed by what people say, because everybody's got ideas, and they're good ideas. That's what's so good about this particular meeting. Everybody's got different ideas. People come out with stuff, and it's fine. It's fine. It really is. It's great, and I'm exhausted. It's 3 hours and a quarter,
it's
folks.
A 3-hour marathon, man.
It is definitely a marathon.
I still got my hand up.
You got your hand.
All right. First, I got to show my Barry Bain book, if it'll show it up. No, the background won't show it. Oh no. There it is. Quantum Theory by Barry Bain. I've got a few bookmarks in it, quite a few actually. I had no idea he was so philosophical. I'll have to look into what he did on expletive, whatever those words were. As you can tell, I have not read that side of Barry Bain, so it's interesting to hear that he's so philosophical. Trevor, I was interested in what you're saying, but I have I literally have no idea what you were saying, that if enough people look at it, it becomes more real. I literally didn't catch the gist of what your point was.
Oh, are you talking about something I said or something I wrote in the comments?
The whole thing you were going on about of how you get closer to reality by doing what?
Oh, well, I'm just saying human minds make errors. Correct.
Right.
Okay. Human minds have difficulty detecting errors they make because the detection uses the same
right
brain. Right. Third party minds are better able to detect an error that another mind is making for more than one reason.
Cross-checking a coordinate.
Yeah. So a sophisticated implementation of this would increase humanity's ability to engage in skillful collective cognition.
Yes. Okay. And actually, that's why I had my hand raised, was on this point, is the construction of such system. I'm glad you said the word sophisticated, because, oh man, do you ever have to get sophisticated, and then you're still in danger of going insane. It's easy to build a robot that has all sorts of cross-checking, all sorts of verifications, all sorts of this, or an artificial intelligence, and then it just goes nuts.
But are you presuming something? Are you presuming anything?
We're trying to build something that works.
What is works a binary? Is works about? Are you pursuing perfection and concluding that it is not possible because perfection cannot be achieved?
Yeah. The point is that to give intelligent social architectures or distributed intelligence a general domain in that is a complex problem that requires a lot of literal engineering steps. And there are many different possible solutions to it. And the point is, we don't always know which are the best solutions. And some of these solutions, one of my standard lines is that one of the reasons why it's sometimes hard to tell genius apart from insanity is because that's where genius lies, is in creating a world that are just at the edge of being tethered to reality, and then they go a little bit further. And I don't think you can ever quite separate those threads. There's always a danger of insanity when you go with the intelligence, and it's true for these machines. So yes, consensus, multi-thread, absolutely. That's what you heard this whole blockchain thing. That's all about multiple cross-checking, people verifying everyone. Very good for preserving information. For the intelligence itself, wow, that is
it's not necessary to pursue deterministic perfection, which is what blockchain stuff does. If you're only aiming for incremental improvement as opposed to aiming for perfection, or maybe during this you can aim for perfection during your incremental improvement, but settle for adequacy, and it changes the way the mind thinks about the problem. It puts it into a mode of thinking positively and constructively rather than negatively and destructively, which has its point. Both are valuable, but I'm saying the mind tends to get stuck in one mode or the other.
I assume that you have read, and one of the great ways to get stuck is to get too many people all agreeing on the same thing. You've read Kuhn's Nature of Scientific Revolution?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should. You really should, because that's what he addresses in detail.
Right. So then do not.
Let me finish. What you were saying is true. We would never have had quantum technology because classical physicists, they had it down smack. It was perfect. They were even saying like, wow, we haven't got anything more to explore. And what happens in the scientific revolutions is you have a consensus in which the solutions start getting exponentially more expensive. And then someone comes along and says, how about this little dangly thread over here everybody's been ignoring for the last 20 years or 100 years or 1,000 years? Let's pull on that thing a little bit. And then the whole thing literally just comes unraveled. So all I'm trying to say to you, please take a look at that book, because it doesn't work that way. Incrementalism usually leads to static, non-innovative, averaged out societies in which you don't have creativity, you don't have new ideas, because everybody knows whatever they did before is right. So it's a real danger for the society level intelligence to get too locked into the averaging effect. One of the reasons
but I'm not locked into. You're describing your model of what I'm saying, and you're describing your model of the future. If we were operating under a methodology, I would expect a whole bunch of people would have pushed the Terry is mistaking his model of reality for a reality itself button, and then we could go ding 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 Terry. We could ring a Buddhist bell, ding, come back to reality, please. And you could, like you said, that because quantum mechanics was discovered, therefore what I'm saying is wrong. This statement is false.
No, I'm saying that there's a lot.
You did say that. If we had technology to rewind the conversation, we could then play back to you what you actually said. And then you could either dispute it, or you could say, okay, actually, I did indeed make a logical error there.
Trevor, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm talking about construction.
Hang on, folks.
Hey, you made an assertion. The assertion was false due to a misunderstanding. Human beings cannot be interested in when they make mistakes, so on and so forth.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying.
Hang on.
In the artificial intelligence robot be better, or are you going to come up with a killing robot? So yeah, but we have to worry about how to do it. And it's just not hard. That's why you keep saying a model. I say we don't have a model. Everybody's
yes,
how to do it, So
consciousness runs on a model of reality. That's how it works.
Yeah, one's on what?
A model of reality. Consciousness generates a model of reality.
There's a consensus on that. You have to create a model.
But you forgot that you were referring to your model while you were engaged in real-time cognition.
Oh,
okay, folks. And now, hang on. Emma, are you still there?
Oh, do we have another hand?
No, because she wanted to say something. I feel very bad. She had her hand up for so long. Emma, I can see your name, but not you. Okay. So listen, folks, we've been at it for nearly 3.5 hours. And so therefore, things were very interesting indeed. Oh, you're still there. Oh, you're outside. That's modern science for you. Do you want to say what you wanted to say?
You've pretty much said all of it. I mean, I'm just wondering if your idea that the universe doesn't exist unless I exist. Does that mean that when we observe the universe, we're actually observing ourselves?
What I meant was that if we observe something, then we exist. We can't observe the universe if we don't exist. So I basically said, and everybody hates this, that if I'm dead, the universe will not exist for me.
Right, but what are we observing then? If the universe doesn't exist, if we're not aware of life to exist, then what are we observing?
No. My point is, if nobody exists, then nobody's observing anything, and then there's no talking about a universe existing. There's nobody to talk about it.
Right.
It just
I
isn't there.
understand what you're saying.
Well, universe could exist with nobody there to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah.
It exists for what?
Maybe not
How?
our concept of the universe, but like a universe. Yeah.
Why would you say that?
I think it's very shows a lot. It's very hubris to like assume that if we any interpretation of quantum mechanics actually that privileges the human as an observer, or the human is really anything in this world, I feel like is a miscalculation. Like we are not that relevant, and the world would be just fine if we weren't here.
No.
Or if anything was here. I mean, I've had thought experiments where I try to imagine what if there was space and no time, but time with no space. Even at least one of those scenarios is, I think, possible.
Yeah.
So I mean,
when you're there to imagine it, yes. When you're not there to imagine it, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, how can it be for you when you're not there?
Well, then what about a unicorn?
What about a unicorn? I'm thinking about a unicorn, therefore. Okay, but if I'm not here, I can't think about a unicorn. A unicorn doesn't exist.
So just because you're not thinking of a unicorn, the unicorn doesn't exist?
For me, no. For me, no. For you, yes.
Right.
Not for me.
But there's other people and there's other observers.
True.
Yeah.
If all people disappear,
that's not what we're talking about.
All of them, where is the universe existing? If I'm not here, the universe doesn't exist for me. If you're not here, the universe doesn't exist for you. If nobody's here, the universe doesn't exist for anybody.
You could talk about bugs, you could talk about microbes, or even just decoherence theory, which is the idea that the observer is other particles. Actually, Emma, you might want to look into something called decoherence theory, and Donald Hoffman, like I mentioned earlier, because decoherence theory is essentially the idea that nothing would actually exist unless it bumps up against something else.
Exactly.
And only when that happens do those things come into reality. So it is at that base level. When we look at something, we're shining particles of light on it, and it's bouncing back to us.
Yeah,
so like
when we look at it, exactly. When
anything looks at it,
when we look at it,
we don't need to. There needs to be no living beings for the laws of physics to be in operation.
Why? On what basis do you say that?
On what basis do you say it wouldn't?
Well, I repeat. If somebody
mine's the norm. You've got to explain why you've got to explain.
No.
If
Actually,
the sun is black. You've got to explain what you mean by the sun is black.
I have not said the sun is black. Okay? I am saying something extremely logical. I am saying when somebody is dead, the universe does not exist for that person. Right?
Yeah.
Good. When 5 people are dead, the universe doesn't exist for those 5 people. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. When everybody for those people. When everybody's dead,
gone. Fine. Everybody's gone. It doesn't matter. The universe doesn't exist. It doesn't need somebody there to ponder its existence.
You're not following my logic. I'm bringing you from 1 to 5 to 1 million to 8 billion.
To infinity. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Everybody can be dead. You can have a universe with no living objects. Why do you think that you can't have just a universe of stone?
So would the universe exist if all humans were dead, but there were still Neanderthals? would the universe exist then?
No,
No?
no.
Ron, I don't understand anything you're saying.
I realize that, but I can't help you anymore. I've been through the logic from 1 to 8 billion. When I get to 7 billion, whatever it is, up to the one left, you're still
Ron,
okay.
when you look away from the moon, does the moon still exist? Is the moon still there when you close your eyes?
That has
That's a
nothing
real
to
simple
do with
question.
it. That has,
Yes or
this has
no?
nothing to do
Yes or
with
no? It's the most
idealism.
concrete
No,
example of what I'm trying to say.
no. If I close my eyes, I'm still alive, and it exists.
That's not what I asked.
Closing my eyes.
When you close your eyes, does the moon exist?
Yes,
Okay.
of course it does.
So if you
But
die, does the moon exist?
Not for me. No,
Okay. So no, not for you, but does the moon exist?
not for me. No.
That's not what I'm asking, Ron.
No,
The
that
world
is
doesn't
what
just
you're
revolve
asking.
around you.
The
I think
moon does
Copernicus showed
not
us that sometime
exist.
like a long time ago.
The
He said
moon-
the world does not revolve
The
around Ron.
moon,
I
the
think that was something
moon
I
does
studied in high
not
school.
exist. The moon does not exist for somebody who's dead. No.
I'm
Not
gonna,
the question, Ron. Why are
gonna-
you're making up your own questions? You can't do that.
Okay. Anyway,
I'm-
it's been very Terry.
I'm going to stick myself in here kind of in Ron's defense because we've had some long and interesting conversations on this. Ron is not a solipsist. I know that when he presents it this way, it sounds kind of like he's going that direction.
I'm not saying that.
If I said an extreme relativist in the special relativity sense, that they were the special observer is kind of where Ron's coming from. I've actually gotten some interesting points from exactly that issue because that turns out to be a fascinating topic when you get into this whole observer.
If you guys can give me any even theoretical reason why the humans would be some sort of privileged observer in the universe, I'm all ears.
No,
I'm all ears.
He's not saying that either. He really isn't. I know I know it sounds like that, but his point is more subtle, and I just want to encourage you that he's not denying the existence of the universe. He's not a wheeler. He's not a wheelerist. It's a different perspective, and you have to kind of like read some of his works and getting a feel for what he's talking about. But he has some. So
I'm pretty well versed in this stuff, Terry. Like either he is preaching solipsism, which is not what I'm saying, or you do believe that there's some sort of fundamental reality out there, one or the other.
Ron of that, but I would again go back to the point that more of an extreme special relativistic perspective, that your own internal frame and your own observations centered on time as defined by yourself is the only reality that you can count on at the moment in how you interact with other things. But he doesn't deny there's other things that are out there.
If when Ron is alive, he thinks that something exists, then when Ron is dead, that same thing exists. That doesn't change.
Very solicious on how it comes over. And I like I said, we've had some interesting conversations on it. I got to get going, folks. So
yes, we all do. Thank you very, very much for coming. It was a great pleasure. I'm pleased you all came. I hope you come again. We're going to have another. We usually have very light conversation as we did this evening, etc. etc. Thank you very, very much. It was a great pleasure, and hope to see you all again next time. Bye, everybody. See ya.